across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon. It's Talk Drive. Thank you so much for your company this afternoon. There's so much to talk about, not least what President Trump has been saying in Davos. And really, it has brought us on, I think, quite a lot. Keir Starmer was talking about it at Prime Minister's Questions. Today, I was talking about that with Julia Hartley-Brewer a little bit earlier on, as I usually do around 12 o'clock on a Wednesday. But Trump confirming he's not going to use military action, outlining what he wants to do. What do you think about what he's saying about Greenland? And should we all just calm down a little bit, as I think the President of the United States actually has? Starmer has ramped things up, though. He says he'll not yield to Trump on Greenland. He says he is being very, very principled and going forward with all his thoughts and all of that. The US is apparently deeply concerned after Labour has approved the Chinese super embassy. We were talking about that yesterday, but loads of people talking about it today. We'll talk to Graham Stringer, the Labour MP, in just a second about that. Trump telling Starmer, fix your country. He's not happy with Europe in general. And the story, I am so interested in this story today. I don't know about you. The driving test cheats soaring by 47%, learners turning to imposters, and Bluetooth earpieces to beat the examiners. I have an earpiece in my ear telling me what to say from the producer from time to time, but he doesn't give me the questions to ask every single time anyway. But if you're in a theory test, you could get the answers in there, or if you're, you could actually get someone who is not you to go and take your driving test for you. Obviously, that's totally illegal and we would never encourage that, but it's happening more and more and more. So can the authorities actually get a handle on all of this? We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Also, Labour hands no need to work benefits to 1.5 million more people since they came to power. We'll talk as well about Iran with Khazra Arabi. He's a great guest. He can talk us all through it, tell us exactly what is happening there. We'll have the sport, we'll find out what's in the sun, and we'll get expert analysis on everything Trump has been saying today. We also have a report from Samara Gill, our reporter, about the SAS chiefs in a last-ditch effort to kill Starmer's Troubles Act. That's something I know there's a load of military families. I know there are a lot of people who serve and have served who watch and listen to Talk, and we will make sure we bring you the absolute latest on that. It's interesting, I was chatting to someone yesterday, not yesterday, the day before actually, who said that they had loads of military friends who don't keep up with the news perhaps as much as Talk viewers and listeners do, but this was the #1 topic that they were talking about. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. We'll have the views of many veterans and an MP as well. So loads to discuss between now and 7 o'clock. I hope you can stay with me for the whole time. There is so much to talk about. So if you want to talk about it on the air with me, it's 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell on Twitter. You can tweet me at talkTV, as I say. You can send me a WhatsApp voice note, which should be less than a minute, please, if you can. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number, 0344 499 1000. So much to talk about. People getting in touch already. And between now and 7 o'clock, we'll get all your views on the air here on Talk Drive. Stay with us. June's been in touch and says, having someone take your driving test is nothing new. In the 1980s, I was interviewing a customer when someone entered the office to tell the customer he had passed his test. I was absolutely gobsmacked. Cliff in Berkshire says, good afternoon, Peter. Good afternoon, Cliff. Good to hear from you. I watched PMQs for the first time in some years today. I was shocked at how juvenile it has all become. It was like a rowdy, sick-form debating society. What kind of message does the mother of all Parliament's coverage send to the rest of the world? Well, Cliff, that is a very, very good point. We make that point often when I'm talking to Julia Hartley-Brewer. I'm on every Wednesday. The PMQs is on 12 o'clock here in the studio with Julia. And actually, is it a good example? And especially as Cliff, you may not have seen it in a few years, but lots of people do actually take notice of that. That's maybe the only bit of Parliament they see in the week, maybe a clip on the news or a clip on this programme. Also, Richard Holden, I've interviewed him many times. He's the Shadow Transport Secretary. He was chucked out of Parliament today by the Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, for barracking the Prime Minister. So some bad behaviour, the Speaker thought anyway, from him. But I want to talk about another big beast in the political firmament. That is Donald Trump. He arrived in Davos late because there were problems with his plane. This Davos World Economic Forum gathering of the great and sometimes good, certainly the rich anyway. And earlier the US president started his speech in Davos by attacking Europe.
And I love Europe, and I want to see Europe go good, but it's not heading in the right direction. In recent decades, it became conventional wisdom in Washington and European capitals that the only way to grow a modern Western economy was through ever-increasing government spending, unchecked mass migration, and endless foreign imports.
But he did say something which was absolutely crucial to this whole debate about Greenland, because there's been a worry, certainly, that there will be military intervention. The other day, in an interview, I think it was with NBC News, the president said, oh, I'm not going to comment on whether we would use military might or not. But he has now said, now confirmed, that he's not going to use military might. So let's hear what President Trump said in that regard.
We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland.
Why can't he just have it? Why can't he just have Greenland? Well, I don't know about that. I'm not sure that would be the right option. And what about the sovereignty of Greenland? Certainly. But what we do know is that the markets are booming in America. The economy is doing better even today as a result of what the president has said, clarifying that there will not be military action in Greenland. I want to talk to Graham Stringer about all of this, the Labour MP for Blakely and Middleton South. Graham, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Tell me what you make of this, because he wants immediate negotiations, the US president says, to acquire Greenland, but he says he won't use force. That has to be welcome news.
Oh, absolutely. I think, obviously, what he says is true, that if the might of the American armed forces invaded Greenland, nobody's going to stop them. But it would devastate the Western alliance of NATO, devastate trade. It would be an extremely bad and unprincipled thing to do. On the other hand, when you look at the globe from the North Pole, and you look at the strategic importance of Greenland and the threat there is from Russia and China, for that matter, it has obvious strategic importance, and a negotiation between the Greenlanders and Denmark with the United States on how best to deal with a real problem should go ahead. I mean, maybe the Greenlanders would prefer to be part of the United States rather than Denmark.
We know a lot of them anyway.
I
spoke to an expert the other day who said 85% of them want some degree of independence. I mean, do you think it's reasonable for Donald Trump to be making these arguments? Because there does seem to be a lot of pearl clutching in Europe when he says, oh, you can't possibly say that. And actually, one person I would say is perhaps not entirely, well, I wouldn't be in agreement with, is the leader of your party, Keir Starmer, who talks about, as Kemi Badenoch made the point today at Prime Minister's Questions, talks about the need for self-determination for the Greenlanders, but not necessarily for people in the Chagos Islands. Do you think that's a fair question to ask of Keir Starmer?
I think it's a fair question to ask, and the answer he gave was very poor. I made the point on the debate on Chagos yesterday that what was good for the Greenlanders should be good for the Chagosians, who, as we're paying this ridiculous amount of money to give away something that's ours, the one group of people who haven't been properly considered in this are the Chagosians.
Well, let's just hold your fire just for a second. I'll get more from you on the Chagosians in just a second, Graham, but I just want to go and look at a clip of Prime Minister's Questions. Keir Starmer doubling down on his Chagos and Greenland views. Let's just remind ourselves what happened at lunchtime in the House of Commons.
President Trump deployed words on Chagos yesterday that were different to his previous words of welcome and support when I met him in the White House. He deployed those words yesterday for the express purpose of putting pressure on me and Britain in relation to my values and principles on the future of Greenland. Mr. Speaker, he wants me to yield on my position, and I'm not going to do so.
What do you make of that answer, and what do you make of the tone there, talking about yielding on values and principles? Is that a reasonable argument to make for Keir Starmer?
Well, It depends, as the leader of the opposition said, on him knowing what's in Donald Trump's mind. In actual fact, that clip, what the Prime Minister said, has now dated.
Yeah, you're right, actually. It's out of date, yeah.
It's completely out of date. President Trump has shown that that is no longer true, has accepted the sovereignty of the Greenlanders, and he won't use force. So there can be discussion. If I was asking a follow-up question to Keir Starmer, I'd say, right, he's accepted that. Would you now accept that the Chagosians have a referendum on what happens to Chagos?
Yeah, no, it's an absolutely fair point. I wonder if I can ask you a little bit about China, another very important strategic global issue. We know, of course, that Starmer is heading to China towards the end of this month, Japan as well. The super embassy that has been approved in London is causing a lot of consternation. What's your view on it, Graham?
I was opposed to it. Not in my constituency, but about a mile and a half away in Manchester 3 or 4 years ago. There were people demonstrating outside the Chinese establishment there, and Chinese diplomats came out onto the pavement, dragged those demonstrators into their grounds and beat them. And the then Conservative government didn't do anything. And I think that's representative of the huge number of so-called Chinese diplomats we have in this country. They're spies. They're not just spying on this country and threatening members of parliament who criticise China. They're spying on the Chinese community and putting threatening them that if they don't do as they're told, then they will be in serious trouble if they go back to China. So I think we should have less Chinese diplomats in this country. They're a threat to our security. They're a threat to people of Chinese origin or who still have Chinese citizenship. And we should be looking for a smaller representation, not a bigger representation.
Graham, you are the Labour MP, of course, for Blakely and Middleton. There's all these rumours flying around. I've got to ask you, Reform UK delaying the defection of a well-known Labour figure. Kate Hoey says it's not her. Is it you?
No. In one sense, I've been asked that question quite a lot because I agree with Reform on their European policies. I agree with them on their energy policies, but I agree with more Labour Party policies than I do with Reform, and I'm not leaving.
Have you had any chats with Nigel Farage? Has he taken you for a cup of tea and said, Graham, do you know what, we think we could do business with you?
No, I have not talked to Nigel. I know him from the referendum campaign, but apart from nodding to him in the Commons, I haven't chatted to him since he interviewed me some months ago on GB News.
Well, so no U-turns from Graham Stringer then, unlike Keir Starmer. Graham, thank you very much indeed for joining us this afternoon. Very interesting to hear your views. As always, that's Graham Stringer MP, the Labour MP for Blakely and Middleton South. What do you make of what he said there? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. That's the number Mark in Glasgow has called. So, Mark, what do you think? What are your views on this Russia, China, Greenland issue and what Trump has been saying this afternoon? You're very welcome to the programme.
Thank you, Peter. Well, for some years, and having visited the Far East, Russia, China, Russia goes to war. China doesn't actually go to war. They always have someone else do it for them. But Russia uses soft economic power. So we already have Russia and China extracting minerals on Greenland. They have licenses to do so. My guess, it's the usual thing as they did in Africa and Venezuela. They then build a port. Of course, it's only Chinese people that are allowed to come in and do that, so God knows what else they've got going on.
And this is one of the questions, sorry to interrupt you, but this is one of the questions I have and some of our viewers and listeners have of who's actually going to build this embassy? Who are the workers that are going to be able to do that, to see what's going on, to do the checks? The fire brigade not allowed in to do fire checks, for example. I think that's absurd. So, you know, there are lots of questions still, even with the approval of this planning application.
You're absolutely right. I guarantee, as it has been, as I was saying, that really the Chinese build infrastructure, the falsely named Spice Road, sounds very friendly, but actually it's to strip out all the assets, minerals, etc. from Africa. And they pay a handful of politicians, and then off they go and to hell with the people. It's happening in the Caribbean. It's happening in the Far East. It's happening in Africa. It's happening in South America. The Chinese want total control of all these rare earths, and Russia also, hence the Ukraine thing. There's a lot of rare earths, oil, etc. assets. So if they can get that, they can pretty well hold the rest of us to ransom in terms of, you want a battery for your electric car? You want microchips?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, guys.
And that's part of the problem, Mark, isn't it? I mean, we've got to do business with China because they are such a huge power and a superpower in many people's estimation. Not quite like America, but getting there. And you look at all these different issues with Greenland as well. We can't not deal with these people.
The Chinese are a superpower, no question about it, but they are principally an economic superpower, but they have an enormous navy, army, air force. We, on the other hand, have nearly as many civil servants as we do army, navy and air force, and we are a complete wet squib. And not furthermore, we seem to be prosecuting our own soldiers from 40 plus years ago.
And we're going to be talking about that a little bit later on in the programme with a special report from our reporter Samara Gill. So Mark, you're going to want to stay tuned for that. Great common sense spoken there, Mark. Really enjoyed speaking to you. Thank you. Lots more people getting in touch, including John in Wallington. John, I haven't heard from you in a wee while. Good to talk to you, or good to hear from you. Peter, it was laughable to hear Starmer talking tough, saying he won't yield on Greenland when he gave away the Chagos Islands and billions of pounds to Mauritius, says John. I think that's a very fair point, actually. Trevor in Harrow says, I really enjoyed Trump's speech today. He seemed to speak honest words, especially how he looked after the family and family homes. I'm still keeping a close eye on the book of Revelations just in case, says Trevor. And Dawn says, hi Peter, having listened to Trump's speech, we know why Starmer didn't go to Davos. Even his embarrassment threshold couldn't take it. Well, very, very interesting thoughts on all of that. Thanks to everybody who's been in touch. Keep your thoughts coming in. 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk a bit more about the Chinese super embassy. It's one thing that a load of people wanted to talk about yesterday, and you know, this is my show, but it's your show too, and if you want to talk about it, we'll talk about it. We've got the chief executive and founder of Strategy Risks, which is a business intelligence firm which quantifies corporate exposure to China. I'm going to find out exactly what those words mean in just a few minutes here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Someone's got in touch on Twitter to say, Peter, why are you in such a good mood today? Well, I'll tell you why. As I'm sure everybody knows, I'm a massive cat person, and my cat had a bit of a scare, Jack. He got a few teeth out the other day, and they found a lump, and there's been a check on it, and I was really worried for a few days. I wasn't telling people about it because I was just very, very worried. It's all clear, everything's fine, it's all marvellous, so great sigh of relief, and everything is back to tickety-boo with Jack, which is absolutely fabulous, and part of the reason I'm in such a chipper mood today. But also it's just great to present this programme. It's great fun, and there's so much going on politically. There's so many people getting in touch as well. Angela says, I'm very concerned regarding the Chinese embassy. Why no fire brigade or building inspectors banned too? Surely health and safety rules are being broken. Plus we offer safe haven for Chinese dissidents, and I can't imagine how unsafe they will feel. Very good point there, Angela. Rosie says, we already have an MP who would be as great a leader as President Trump. His name is Rupert Lowe. So lots of views coming in today. I want to speak to Isaac Stonefish now, who's Chief Executive and founder of Strategy Risks. Isaac, it says here that you're a business intelligence firm which quantifies corporate exposure to China. Can you put that into sort of words that someone with my limited intellect would understand? What do you actually do?
Thank you for having me. We help investors, governments, companies understand the links between U.S. businesses, British businesses, and China, and specifically the Chinese Communist Party. And so if you're worried that, say, Apple or Microsoft has very close ties to China, or you want to understand what those ties are, we help talk through that, and we do other geopolitical advice and analysis as well. So
when you hear about this super embassy that has been approved in London, what are your thoughts about that, especially with the Chinese Communist Party? The regime there is clearly expanding its remit in the United Kingdom. There are lots of problems with that, but could there be opportunities too economically?
There certainly always are opportunities economically. The problem is there seems to be a lot of pique and frustration in the UK about what the Trump administration is doing. And one unintended consequence of that has been to push London closer to Beijing in ways that will likely be more harmful for people in the UK than beneficial.
And when you look at Canada as well, Mark Carney, former Governor of the Bank of England here in London, of course, who's now the Prime Minister of Canada, essentially showing maybe a little bit of leg on this and saying, hold on a second, China exists too, because of Canada, of course, has quite a bad relationship diplomatically with the United States at the moment. Do you think that Britain could move in that direction? Should we?
Can it? Yes. Should it? No. I don't usually see Canada as the model for the UK to follow. And I think it's surprising to see not the reaction to what President Trump is doing. I think the reaction makes a lot of sense, but I think the US is less trustworthy, therefore China is more trustworthy.
It doesn't necessarily follow, does it?
Exactly.
So when if you're in Keir Starmer's position, he hasn't gone to Davos at the moment. I think things have changed. I wonder what you think over the course of this afternoon. Certainly when we've been told that President Trump is saying that no military action now, we've seen the stock market rally within that. How should people react to that? And did they overreact previously?
It's such a difficult question. Trump's people will say, don't take him literally, but it's really hard because words are the coin of the realm, and we're trying to understand what's actually going through his mind. I do think Europe needs to understand the point about defense. That is a very serious one, about Europe defending itself. I do not think President Trump will go all the way on Greenland. I certainly hope not. I do think calmer heads will prevail. I also do think that countries need to stop seeing what the US is doing is unpredictable and what China is doing is predictable. What Beijing says it's doing is predictable. What Beijing actually does is very unpredictable.
Just expand on that a bit more, that second point about what it's actually doing and being unpredictable in that, because that's fascinating from our perspective, especially with the super embassy that's just been approved.
So Beijing will say, regular diplomacy, we want to have better relations with the UK, we want to have better relations with countries around the world. And then subtly, secretly, they'll be doing things called influence operations, where they'll try in various nefarious ways to strengthen what it calls the friends of the Communist Party and weaken its enemies. It'll have a lot of predatory business practices that are very closely linked to the state, and it will pretend at the same time that it's not doing them. Widespread hacking into global entities, British entities, US entities, which the party sanctions and approves, but pretends isn't happening as well. And
what do you mean by predatory business practices? What does that actually mean?
Some of it is a huge amount of subsidies for Chinese businesses so that they can export around the world. Some of it is really unfair treatment towards British businesses inside of China. It's very well known that Chinese companies have a massive leg up in the Chinese market, arguably much more so than, say, British companies have a leg up inside Britain. So Beijing will talk about free and fair trade, but it certainly won't practice it domestically, and it does not practice it globally.
How much does this embassy matter, do you think? Does a building matter, or is just the pervasive influence of China, what you're outlining there with those business practices, with its cyber hacking, with its lots of other ways in which it's trying to influence our society, the way it's in universities to a huge extent as well. Does one building matter, or is it kind of symbolic actually of something we should maybe push back against more than we have been doing already?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think more the latter. So it is intensely symbolic about the size of the Communist Party's influence that Britain will take. And had Britain said no to this embassy, it would be a really firm foot in the ground pause. Britain hasn't. And so hopefully this will galvanize more protests, more pushback, or it will be open season.
Is Britain still a world power in any real way, in any tangible way? Or are we just buffeted by the winds of Trump on one side, China on the other, various other global players, India, the pervasive influence of China in Africa, for example? Are we just buffeted by these winds? Do we have any actual say here? Could you have seen a UK Prime Minister actually standing up and saying, do you know what, China, we'll do business with you, but only if you behave yourself?
I don't think Canada is a global power, and yet, Mark Carney has decided to stand up and take a very firm stance on these issues, and not in the way that I would advise him to do, but in a very powerful way. Yeah. And I think the UK has the same opportunity. Broadly speaking, no. I think the UK is still a world power in education. I think it's still a world power in literature. I'd like to see a lot more muscular UK posture on the world stage, but leaning towards China usually does not make one a leader among the Council of Nations. Really interesting to talk to you, Isaac. Thank you. Isaac Stonefish there, Chief Executive and Founder of Strategy Risks there. What did you make of what he was saying there? 0344 499 1000. On Trump, Carl in Liverpool has been in touch, has given me a ring. Carl, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good afternoon, Peter.
Hiya.
So what I took from it was we pretty much know when Donald Trump speaks, we listen anyway.
Yeah.
And he's a man of action. What I've seen from him today was, it was, although he waffles on, it was quite mature in how he was talking to these politicians, these leaders, and telling them, where they're going wrong and, what he's done to benefit his country and stuff. I mean, regardless of what people think of him, in his first year, he's absolutely smashed it, Peter. He's gone in. And because he's not a career politician and he doesn't care what people think or say, he's just done what's right by the American people.
It's kind of a superpower not to care what people think. It's something that I sort of wish I had it, and then other times I wish I didn't have it. But it's interesting, Carl, isn't it, in that we're in a situation where we just have totally different politician as the most powerful man in the world. I just wonder, do you think people overreact to what he says? Because a very good friend of mine who's very, very wise, I was chatting to her earlier this week, and she was saying, look, he is not going to invade Greenland. It is not going to happen. Everybody just needs to take a chill pill, calm down, and so it is proved.
Yeah, I think we all kind of knew he wasn't going to do it. And when he speaks like that, you don't take it with a pinch of salt, but you take it as serious, but also knowing that he's not going to do it. But he is a man of action, and he's a man that means business because he is a businessman.
Yeah.
And he's pretty much running America like that because he wants the American people to do well. They've been through a lot like the British people don't. I mean, you couldn't have two more contrasting leaders. On one hand, you've got the most powerful man doing the great and the good for not only his country, but stepping in when other countries need them and looking at Europe and saying you've got massive problems. But then you've got Keir Starmer, who has done nothing for the British people, given lands away in the Chagos Islands, and not only that, we're paying for the privilege. Our armies are diminished, our forces are on the knees, the country's on its knees, and he doesn't speak a good game, Keir Starmer. He's all words and lies, and he's done that many turnbacks. I think he's got lost.
Do you think he should be in Davos at the moment? Do you think he should be talking to Trump and other leaders?
Absolutely, Peter, absolutely, because why should he be here when you've got the most powerful man in the world giving a speech at that at the Economic Forum, and you've got Keir Starmer back home playing in the House of Commons, and what beggars belief is that nothing seems to get solved in that place because they all shout and moan. You've got the Speaker of the House telling them to calm down and wind the next in, but then you turn to Donald Trump and his speech, and you think that is a man that means to do what he says.
Okay.
He wants the good, and then you look at Keir Starmer, and it's almost like a playground situation in Parliament when there's PMQs. It's just nothing gets solved.
It's embarrassing, isn't it, Carl? It's embarrassing.
Very much so, because Donald Trump must watch these and laugh and go, these people are just children. Because if you remember rightly, that man said the adults are back in charge. I don't see adults. I see people who are lost in all their lives and all their deceit, and that he is a traitor to this country, Peter, because I think he is putting us...
You really think he's a traitorous Prime Minister? I mean, that's a very strong word to say, Carl.
Well, okay, Peter, so let's take the Chinese embassy, super embassy.
Yeah.
When he's being given those plans and he's being told of what the situation is, there's going to be 200-odd redacted rooms, there and then, in that moment, you go, sorry about that, we don't have a deal.
Yeah, although they say they've seen the whole plans, though, Carl. But I know what you mean, and it doesn't feel as if he's really standing up for us. To a lot of people, anyway. You clearly feel that way, Carl.
Absolutely, I'm a veteran, Peter, and look what they're doing to the people, to those soldiers from 30 years ago. It's disgusting.
Well, Carl, listen, we're going to be talking about that a little bit later on. You're going to want to stay tuned for that. Samara Gill's got a report on it, our reporter here at Talk. So there's lots to talk about on that. And Carl, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. Maybe on we've had you on today, but maybe on a future occasion. Certainly, give me another ring, Carl. Thank you. That's Carl in Liverpool there. Marge says it is being asked why didn't Starmer go to Switzerland, but instead do his chest-beating act about imaginary stance regarding the Chagos Islands. I think Trump, who I dislike, displayed this in his 10-hour long mixture of waffle and diatribe. Starmer would have looked like an utter pleb and true invertebrate. Weak. He just hid in the House of Commons. Another person says, Fiona says, we see clearly where Starmer stands. He won't be blackmailed by Trump, but he will by Xi Jinping. Is this Starmer's second visit in 18 months? Never known any British Prime Minister to do this. Do you, Peter? I'm not sure. Can we just check, actually, when Starmer was in China previously? I know it wasn't that long ago, but I'm not quite sure it's within the last 18 months. Fiona, we'll double check that and we'll get back to you. It might have been also for one of these global summits as well. It may not have been a visit specifically to China, but Fiona, we're going to check that out and I will tell you when I'm told what it is. We've got the top team behind the glass working on that. Penny in Essex says, good to see you, Peter. Allowing the Chinese to build a mega embassy in London is total and utter madness. Why is Starmer sucking up to the Chinese? They spy on us enough, so making it this easy must delight them at the stupidity of our useless Prime Minister. Penny in Essex. She also says, I'm delighted Jack is okay, having had scares of my lovely Siamese for the last 19 years. We had her. I know just how you felt. Well, thank you for Penny. That is lovely. We're going to talk in just a second to Jack Elsom, the political editor of The Sun, and I'm told by the powers that be that apparently Starmer hasn't been as Prime Minister to China. This is his first time as Prime Minister to China, so that will be happening towards the end of the month. Lots more to discuss in the next segment. Starmer set to make his first visit to China by a British leader for 8 years next week, days after Beijing's mega embassy in London was approved. So thank you to the producers for that. Lots more to discuss in just a few minutes with Jack Elsom, political editor of The Sun. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to Martin in Leicester, who says now that the Prime Minister has agreed to the new Chinese mega embassy, why would the US keep sharing vital intelligence with this country? Well, they are part of Five Eyes, which is, let me try and do this off the top of my head, the intelligence links between the US, Canada, the United States, Australia and New Zealand. But my question with Five Eyes is always, why is it not called 10 Eyes? So I don't know. And also New Zealand almost came out, and would it have to be called Four Eyes at that point? These are important questions. Martin Allen, who is in York and Trent, said on the embassy, who is it going to cost the British, how much is it going to cost the British taxpayer to police all the staff and diplomats at this embassy? It's a very good point. We're going to need to keep an eye on all of them, I'm afraid. And John says the truth of the matter is the UK is no longer a superpower. Nobody cares what the UK thinks. I wonder what Jack Elsom thinks about that. Jack is political editor at The Sun. Jack, are we really a global power? Is Starmer being listened to, whether he was in Davos or not? We know Reeves was there yesterday, the Chancellor, but certainly he's reacting to events rather than shaping them. That's certainly the thoughts of many of our viewers and listeners. What's your expert opinion, Jack?
Well, it strikes me that Donald Trump really does respect strong leaders, and it seems that he is intent on a world in which the strongest silverbacks seem to carve it up between themselves. He talks about his friend Vladimir Putin. He worships, Mohammed bin Salman. He seems to like people who assert themselves on the world stage. He seems to take quite a dim view of European leaders because he doesn't see them as being as much of an influence and as forceful. And for all of the painstaking miles that Keir Starmer has put in building a pretty impressive relationship with Donald Trump, it doesn't actually seem to be paying dividends that much, I don't think, because we're not listened to in the Oval Office. Trump can flip at the drop of a hat and come after Keir Starmer like we saw yesterday. It doesn't really seem that we have much of a seat at the table. I think we're definitely still a force in the world, but unless you are a big dictator like Vladimir Putin, like Xi Jinping, like MBS, even people like Kim Jong-un, he said positive things about in the past, then it doesn't really seem that Trump wants to listen to you.
It's a very good point, Jack. And actually on that point, I just want to take a quick look at what Donald Trump has said about the UK's energy policies. He's saying this in Davos earlier today.
The United Kingdom produces just 1/3 of the total energy from all sources that it did in 1999. Think of that, 1/3. And they're sitting on top of the North Sea, one of the greatest reserves anywhere in the world, but they don't use it. And that's one reason why their energy has reached catastrophically low levels with equally high prices.
I mean, he is not pulling his punches there. We also know the US deeply concerned after the approval of the Chinese super embassy. And when you hear Keir Starmer attempting to be bullish, talking about his values and principles, as he would put it, and has put it on a number of occasions, actually, Prime Minister's questions earlier today, there does seem to be some sort of disconnection between the two men's views of one another and indeed their respective countries, Jack.
Yeah, you're totally right. Donald Trump in the past has not minced his words when it comes to what's happening in the UK, whether that's about free speech or more noticeably wind power. He says he hates all the windmills in his native Scotland. He says they're terrible, ugly, nasty. And he also says that migration is ruining the UK as well. Two things that he's been very vocal about. But, it does seem that really, on the issue of Greenland, we are just going along for the ride. And I thought that Keir Starmer, he spoke tough today. He got some cheers from his backbenchers. He probably won the day in the House of Commons at Prime Minister's questions. But he said, we will not yield our values. But his values will count for diddly if Donald Trump decides to put American gunboats on the shores of Greenland. Ditto for all of the NATO countries, because America's military might is just totally unbeatable. Now, it's interesting, and I think that world leaders will be breathing a sigh of relief. In his speech at Davos a few hours ago, Donald Trump said that he wouldn't be using force, but Donald Trump has said many things and then goes back on them overnight. And so, hopefully he means what he says and that he won't be invading Greenland anytime soon. But with this president, you really just can't bank on anything because he's so erratic.
What do you make of what Kemi Badenoch was saying about the Chagos Islands? Essentially saying, as I have been banging on about this week for a couple of days, we've talked about it before, Jack, there is this fundamental disconnection between what Starmer says on Greenland, saying the 57,000 people who live there need to be able to have self-determination, whereas when it comes to the Chagosians, well, actually, it doesn't matter because of international law. And Kemi Badenoch standing up for the Chagosians, talking about this. Some people say, oh, well, they haven't lived in the Chagos Islands for 60 years. Well, they were forcibly removed. So the question is, what does Starmer actually believe? And do you think that Kemi Badenoch was maybe on to a bit of a winner with that one? So certainly how a lot of our viewers and listeners feel, and no clear answer really from Starmer earlier at PMQs.
No, I think you're right. That was the one bit where she really had him on the ropes. The Prime Minister said that Greenland, the future of Greenland, should be decided by Greenlanders. I agree with you. So why not the same for the future of Chagos, determined by the Chagosians? And, I really do think this Chagos Islands palaver has been a real headache for Keir Starmer. I think that he clearly didn't bank on such a big fallout when he thought he was just going along with international law as he seed it, even though it was an advisory opinion from the ICJ. Tories did start it as well, so he probably thought that would be the get out there.
Bit of cover,
Yeah, exactly. But, if you're the one to really pull the trigger, then you're the one that's going to get the flack. And he's had to double down. But his primary defence for this whole thing, which he's really leaned on for the past 12 months or so, has been the US's public blessing for this deal. Statements from Donald Trump in the Oval Office, subsequent statements from the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. And then when Donald Trump spectacularly pulled the rug from underneath him, he didn't really have much of an answer. Now, yesterday, it was interesting because Downing Street's position, even though Donald Trump called this a great act of stupidity, they played it down. They said that the US formally still supports this deal. They basically said that Donald Trump was just talking tough to try and extract some concessions out of Greenland, and it's really about Greenland. But since then, we've had my colleague Harry Cole ask in the White House press room, are you now officially opposed to this deal? Donald Trump said yes. We've had the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saying that the United Kingdom is letting down America by ceding this territory. And at the lobby briefing after Prime Minister's questions today, Downing Street were really on the back foot because they would just simply not answer the question. Do you think, is it your understanding, that the Americans either back this deal or now oppose this deal? They didn't really have an answer for it. Now, I think they're hoping that Donald Trump doesn't really understand the intricacies of this deal, and it does seem that he picks up issues and then drops them without necessarily diving into the detail, because, as we saw yesterday, he reckons that we're going to do this deal to get money. Actually, we're paying
quite the opposite.
100 million for the privilege.
100 million a year, exactly.
A year.
Exactly, Jack. Should he be in Davos, do you think? Would that be the right place for the Prime Minister to be today?
I think so. I think the Prime Minister is feeling quite sensitive to accusations that he's out of the country quite a lot. But I don't think any right-minded person could really begrudge a trip to Davos when clearly world events now are the main story in town. Greenland, Ukraine, all of the world's power brokers seem to be in the Swiss Alps, and I think the fact that our Prime Minister's not there, would shock some people. Yeah. But I think he's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't he?
We'd be sitting here calling him never hear Keir if he was there. Jack, the next story I'm talking about, one of the big talking points we're talking about today, is about driving test cheats. It's soared by 47%. Can you drive? You got a driving licence?
Yeah, I do. I learned to drive on the Isle of Wight, which is actually pretty easy because it's just country roads and one tiny stretch of dual carriageway. But I don't drive much in London, if I'm honest. I like to walk or get the tube.
I know what you mean. And did you pass your test the first time?
I actually passed my test the second time. But they say that people that pass the second time are actually the best drivers because they have more time with an instructor rather than just going out to the roads and being reckless.
How convenient for you, Jack. That's very interesting.
That's what they say, not my words.
No, yes, exactly. The words of RAC magazine. It's interesting as well that people are turning to imposters and Bluetooth earpieces to beat the examiners as well. Did you get the theory test first time?
I got the theory first time, yeah.
There we are. Well, listen, very interesting to talk to you as always, Jack. Thank you. That is Jack Elsom there, who is the political editor of The Sun. What do you think about what he said? 0344 499 1000. Dan in Kent says, I watched a programme ages ago in Greenland, and the head of mining for rare earth said it's a small operation because of Danish funding, and the small amount mined is sold to China, but they're expecting investment from outside. Greenlanders will be rich one way or another. Let's hope for national security reasons it's the US who controls it, Cardi P, says Dan in Kent. Well, thank you for that. Lots more thoughts coming your way. And we will speak to Mark Bourne, who is the head of the AA Driving School Academy, on this scandal. The driving test cheating soaring by 47%, learners turning to imposters, and Bluetooth earpieces. You have an earpiece and it tells you the answers. I know how they feel. Ryan, the producer, tells me what to say, and as always, I oblige, because I'm always do exactly what I'm told by the producers. Lots to discuss in just a few minutes. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Ryan just said, hurry up and take the break. Time for a break. I'll see you in a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody on Twitter who's sending me pictures of their cats to say the good news about Jack. That is Jack, my cat, who's got the all clear from the vet, which is great after we found a lump, but it's all fine. He is fine. Amy says, Starmer spoke at PMQs about what Donald Trump said yesterday on the Chagos Islands was different to what he said previously. Surely Trump can change his mind. When Lamy was Foreign Secretary, didn't he say if Trump wasn't happy then with the deal, it wouldn't go through? Very good point, Amy. Rosie says, I think when Mark Carney was at the Bank of England, I got more financial predictions right than he did. Another person says, I wonder how Macron feels after watching Trump's speech. Will he now change his sunglasses after trying to come across as the cool French kid, but it's been made a laughing stock at the World Economic Forum stage? I bet Macron is furious. Well, we can't tell because we can't see his eyes. We can't see how furious he is. Frank says Starmer was trying to be tough at PMQ, saying he would stand firm against Trump on tariffs regarding Greenland. Well, watch out for another U-turn. Trump will acquire Greenland, but only after the UK and EU roll over to have the threat of the USA pulling out of NATO. It'll be very, very interesting to see what happens. Thanks also to the person who got in touch to tell me about their friend who failed their driving test 17 times and failed the theory test the theory test 17 times and the actual practical test 9 times. Well, attempts to cheat at driving tests in Britain increased by 47% in the space of a year. 2,844 cases of cheating were recorded in the year to the end of September 2025. That is the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency figures show. Of the nearly 3,000 cases recorded, more than a third involved people trying to use technology, such as concealed Bluetooth earpieces, to cheat in driving theory tests. Well, I want to talk to Mark Bourne now, who is head of the AA Driving School Academy. Mark, have you ever rumbled one of these people?
Good afternoon, Peter.
Hi there.
Not personally myself. So the driving school, we provided tuition and the support for the theory test, but don't undertake the theory test or the practical test. That is with the DVSA.
So when you're teaching someone, have you ever come across people, or maybe your colleagues have ever come across people who say, well, actually, is there a way around this here? I mean, it's a reasonably small number, but it's increased to a huge degree, and impersonators and learners who use these people could be sent to prison, banned from driving, ordered to carry out unpaid work, and made to pay court costs.
Well, I think driving instructors always have to be a little bit vigilant, because sometimes some of the tactics that are used is somebody might say, oh, I've got a short notice test. Are you available? Could you take me maybe for a lesson or two? Because, of course, arriving in a driving school car adds to the cover of things. And so driving instructors are quite often, very, very wary if somebody asks perhaps to meet at a train station or a public location as opposed to a home address. And also, obviously, when they do the license check and making sure, well, is this actually somebody who's local?
Yeah, and there are checks that you have to do. Are you surprised by these figures at all?
I think they're absolutely staggering figures, and I think one of the negative, one of the unwanted sort of consequences of the driving test backlog is people are going to desperate measures to try and get through this test. And if you've been unsuccessful a number of times and you've got somebody maybe offering this service, maybe it is too easy and too tempting at the moment.
Let me get your thoughts, Mark, on what you think of what the DVSA say here. This is the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency. Marion Kitson, who's the Director of Enforcement Services, who says DVSA is committed to tackling practical and theory test fraud, and we've increased our fraud detection capabilities. It is essential all drivers demonstrate they have the right skills, knowledge and attitude to drive safely. People who attempt to cheat driving tests put all road users at risk by trying to obtain a driving licence fraudulently. Our counter-fraud team carried out robust investigations into suspected fraud, working with the police to bring fraudsters to justice and keep Britain's roads safe. I mean, that's all fine, isn't it? But if they're going up by 47%, maybe that vigilance isn't vigilant enough.
Well, it's really hard to tell, isn't it? Because you're almost, if you're increasing that resource and you're doing more checks and things like that, you're obviously getting more success. But certainly it does cause you concern, perhaps in terms of if what has gone unnoticed and has managed to get through the system. And I think that's the thing is nowadays you have to be really vigilant in terms of absolutely everybody that comes into a test centre, whether that's a theory test or a practical test centre.
Among those exposed as a test cheat, Satwinder Singh, jailed for a year on October 23 after impersonating at least 36 learners at their theory test, charging them £1,500 for a test that cost just £23 to sit at a time. Oliver YOLO, You Only Live Once, was jailed for 24 weeks at around the same time after charging learners £300 to sit their driving tests on their behalf. I mean, can you, not that we would ever condone it, of course it's illegal, people shouldn't be doing it, it's wrong, but can you understand why people do that? Because people do get very, very nervous when it comes to driving. I remember my driving test, like many, many people, I was incredibly nervous. I don't think I've ever felt as big a sense of relief in my life than it was when I was told I'd passed it, I thought I'd fluffed it. I mean, can you understand why people go to these lengths?
I think ultimately, I mean, we all get nervous, and especially having somebody sitting there, in a fluorescent jacket and assessing you for 45 minutes is absolutely nerve-wracking. And that's why it's so important to be ready for that test. Not just to be able to go, I can drive next to my driving examiner, but actually being put under test conditions and things like that. And if you think about beyond the driving test, there's bound to be opportunity or times there where you're also nervous, perhaps because you're driving in an unfamiliar location or on unfamiliar roads, say rural roads that you might not be used to. And so actually being able to drive with nerves is an important part of the whole process of learning to drive. So I think it's if you need to be able to prepare for it. It is a test, and you need to be able to prepare for it.
My driving instructor, a guy called Jim, had a very soothing voice, and we did a lot of sort of practice tests when we got to the end of him teaching me driving in the sort of 3 or 4 weeks coming up to the test. He did a lot of practice tests, and he had this very soothing voice, and he would say, you know, if you did something like adjusting something, taking your eyes off the road, he would go, "That's an instant fail, Peter." And there's a member of my family, she'll remain nameless, who was not particularly happy when she was driving. She would do certain things, and I just said, "That's an instant fail, I'm afraid." He was someone who'd been driving for 20 years. I mean, when you see these statistics, when you hear of the desperate lengths people go to, what would your message be to them, Mark? What would you say to these people who even consider this, who might meet somebody in a pub or see somebody online who says, "Give me a few £100 and I'll take this test for you"? Obviously, it's illegal, and we've got to discourage people on that basis alone. But there's more to it.
There is more to it, but I think ultimately, and it does obviously require so much patience at the moment with waiting for tests and things like that, but it is absolutely, it's about getting the right level of tuition, you know, and making sure that you're absolutely happy with your driving instructors that's providing that tuition. It is about preparing for the test and having those mock tests, and it's about preparing and doing things early, so you can't book your practical test until you've passed your theory test. So it's worth getting your theory test study done and getting that out of the way before you then, you know, and then you can sort of at least be...
What are the backlogs like at the moment, Mark? Because there are quite a number of young people, usually my friends' kids these days, who are saying, you know, it's taking ages to even get a test scheduled, and then if maybe they fail it, they've got to go for another test. That takes a long time as well. Yeah,
so it's around about 22 weeks, which is the average time. So literally just under 6 months waiting for a test, which if you're starting from the very beginning and you're gradually doing your lessons each week and building up your experience, that could potentially work out reasonably well. But the real challenge is it puts so much pressure on that first test.
Yes.
There is always that pressure anyway, and that's where the real challenge then comes. If you're unsuccessful, it's how do you keep your skills present?
Yeah. Why is there such a backlog, just briefly, Mark?
So ultimately, there's 3 things really. We had the COVID pandemic where tests couldn't be undertaken, and that built up a backlog. I think there's been a misjudgment from the DVSA in terms of understanding then sort of demand for tests and how that increased over the years, and then also the number of examiners. You know, for a test, you need to sit there next to an examiner, so you need plenty of examiners.
You need a warm body. Mark, very interesting to hear from you. Thanks very much. That's Mark Bourne there, who's head of the AA Driving School Academy. Thanks to Joanna in Salisbury as well. He says, "Hi Cardi P, I passed my test first time in the days when there were no seat belts. My goodness." The examiner said when he hit the dashboard with the paper, acted as if a child had stepped off the pavement and nearly put him through the windscreen. "I shan't ask you to do that again." He said he was stroppy. "I thought I'd fail, but he passed me. I don't think he wanted me back." Well, yes, I can see his point there. My grandmother, who died aged 96 a few years ago, she didn't do a driving test at all. She was just given a license. She was a very good driver, but she's old enough to not even do the test. Lots more to come on Greenland. Tell us your thoughts on your driving test and this scandal as well in the next hour here on Talk Drive.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good evening. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. Loads to discuss this Wednesday afternoon. There's really a lot on Greenland, of course. The President of the United States has said he's not going to use military might. He wants to persuade the Greenlanders or other nations that the USA needs Greenland. We'll talk about that in just a second. Driving tests, a big one. Loads of people getting in touch about your driving test. Now we have the statistics. There's 47% rise in dodgy criminals taking driving tests, often having earpieces in their ear. I have one for this show, but that's legitimate. People giving them answers for these driving tests, the theory tests and the practical tests. We'll talk about the sport as well this hour. We'll talk about Iran too. Loads of different outlets, loads of media ignoring what's going on in Iran. We are not doing that at any point. We haven't and we will not. Khazra Arabi, who's director of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Research United Against Nuclear Iran, will be with me in just a few minutes' time. Loads to discuss. I want to discuss it with you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, less than a minute, please. We'll try to play a few of those out. We will also take, of course, WhatsApp text messages. You can send those through in the main number and give me a ring on the main number, which is 0344 499 1000. Thanks to everybody who's been in touch. So much more to discuss between now and 7 o'clock here on Talk Drive. Loads on driving tests. Thank you to Joe, who says, love your show, Cardi P. I run a driving school, and ever since COVID, DVSA has been abysmal. They cannot retain examiners. Examiners still work to rule in some cases. Try to not get a driving test. Just go out because some debris like leaves in a footwell. That's the reason sometimes they won't go. They're causing cancellations. They rarely do overtime to help clear backlogs. In the summertime, they finish at 3:30 p.m. when they could have worked later, as evenings are still lighter. Those civil servants, dare I say, any more, says Joe from Norfolk. Graham in Milton Keynes says, regarding fraudulent driving tests, why not issue a photo driving licence from day one? They do that in Northern Ireland, is all I will say, Graham. This would be on the system as a provisional only. As examiner, you can then be sure who you are, say you are, unless you have an identical twin. I don't have an identical twin, and maybe he wouldn't be a good driver if he existed. Sally's been in touch. I love this one. My driving instructor used to say things like, hey Sal, he's a bit of a looker, isn't he? And then tell me to keep my eyes on the road. That's a very good distraction technique there. Christina says, if people feel the need to cheat at the written and practical, they obviously have something to hide. Don't wear the nerves theory. And Dawn says, when I was taking a driving lesson, my instructor shouted, slow down, it's not a fire engine. I passed a second time back in prehistory, says Dawn. Lots of people getting in touch about Donald Trump as well. He is in Davos at the moment, the Swiss jamboree of the World Economic Forum. Lots of powerful people there, but our Prime Minister is not there. Let's find out what the Prime Minister has been saying. Earlier on this afternoon, he started his speech by attacking Europe.
And I love Europe, and I want to see Europe go good, but it's not heading in the right direction. In recent decades, it became conventional wisdom in Washington and European capitals that the only way to grow a modern Western economy was through ever-increasing government spending, unchecked mass migration, and endless foreign imports.
But there was a massive sigh of relief from so many people, including in London, when Donald Trump said he wouldn't be using military might to take over Greenland. This is what he said.
We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force, where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland.
Donald Trump there in Davos. Lots to discuss with Michael Graham, who is a US political commentator and managing editor of Inside Sources. Michael, were you breathing a sigh of relief that he's not going to invade the shores of Greenland and the 57,000 people who live there can perhaps sleep soundly in their beds without the American might on their doorstep?
Well, first, for the driving instructors, I do not have an identical twin, so maybe
okay. So you say
I have an evil. No.
Hold on. Am I actually talking to Michael Graham, or is it your evil twin brother Boris Graham? That's what I want to
know. Evil twin Mike Graham, plank of the week. So anyway, so that's first thing. Second thing is, nobody in the U.S. believes for a second that Donald Trump is going to try to use military force to take Greenland. No one believes it for a second. The military. I mean, our system is such that there would be so many roadblocks in his way. It just would not be worth it. We just assume that one of two things is going to happen. Either Trump is going to stumble drunkenly through this room, knock over a bunch of stuff, and then leave like he did when he was talking about, taking over Canada, or he's going to stumble drunkenly through the room and actually knock something over that needed to be knocked over, and you'll end up with something that needs to happen with Greenland. This is what makes Trump so infuriating. He's crazy, but he's not nuts. He starts with a legit premise. And look, the perfect example is the Chagos Islands deal. Oh, Diego Garcia is America's unsinkable, aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. England's giving it away. Mm-hmm. Whoa.
Maybe that's not such a good idea after all.
But my point is this. The current situation in Greenland, where theoretically Denmark could sell Greenland to Russia tomorrow. Who's going to stop them?
Yeah.
How would you stop them?
The Danish don't want to do that, though, and the Greenlanders don't want to be American.
The Danish today don't want to do this, just like America before Trump would never have done 735 things that we've done with Trump.
It's a fair point.
What happens when, look, you guys had, who was the crazy anti-Semite you had for you, Prime Minister there for a while?
He wasn't Prime Minister, he was Leader of the Opposition, Jeremy Corbyn, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's right, he didn't, that's right, yeah. But I'm saying, imagine a UK Jeremy Corbyn kind of stuff. Imagine, I'm saying, things can change. You can't count on, particularly in this era, the lesson we should all be learning from Ukraine to Southeast Asia to Venezuela is the what we consider the norm isn't permanent. It's just the way it is today.
Yeah.
And so if at the end of all this, you end up with a firm trilateral treaty between U.S., the EU generally, and Denmark that says we are going to make control of Greenland something that no one can decide by themselves.
Yeah.
And we have this access, and the U.S. can go back to 17 bases anytime it wants. And if Russia wants to put a base there, Denmark can't just say yes. Because some future, Zoran Mondami, the new mayor of New York City, the Zoran of Denmark could do that. That would actually be positive for the world. But once again, with Trump, you don't know if you're going to get there.
Well, it's very true. So essentially, you're saying you can see his logic with Greenland, with the security aspect that he talks about as well.
Logic is strong. Strong is
okay.
logic. My point is, he, like so many things, like the border, he identified a problem with the border. He was completely right. Now, he said 5,000 crazy things about Mexican rapists and stuff to get there. But in America, our border is as secure as any modern Western nation's border can be. We are at 100% realistic security.
Yep.
Is the UK at that?
Absolutely not. Absolutely
is Europe
not.
at that?
Yeah.
So, call him crazy, but he's good at identifying problems.
Well, and he does follow through as well. And one thing that drives me nuts is that we had quite a senior correspondent at the BBC on Sunday night saying, he never follows through with things. He always makes these promises and never follows through. Venezuela followed through. Iran followed through. Gaza followed through. Greenland looks as if he's following through. Certainly without military action. I'm very glad that's the case because I don't want there to be military action. And Trump is very anti-war in many regards, although maybe that's changing. Trump 2.0 different from Trump 1.0, but certainly we're in a very different space here, aren't we? And when it comes to the Chagos Island point that you make, earlier on in the Prime Minister's questions here in the UK, Keir Starmer was saying, I won't compromise on my principles and my values. Well, actually, the more flexible approach that Donald Trump has, love it or loathe it, is actually working for him.
The idea of the West backing away from this junction point that puts pressure on China, puts pressure on the Islamist elements that are still in the Middle East. And things are so much better today than they were in 2001. I agree. But that doesn't mean that you don't have Islamist regimes, and ISIS is fighting right now, and Syria could fall back into the pit tomorrow.
Yeah, we talked about that the other day.
Back away from that. The UK should not only not be giving it away, it should be saying, hey, we're going to take some of our stuff from other parts of the world that aren't as hot and put it here because we can see what the future looks like, and that is an aggressive China and the ongoing problem from Turkey to Gaza of Islamism. And that would make sense. And there's not, it's very interesting. There's a blog, and I hope I don't mess up the name of it, but it's called, I think, The Scramble for Europe. And it's based on this idea that back before World War I, when the European powers were colonizing, there was this scramble for Africa because people saw this continent with a lot of value, a lot of stuff to grab, and there were no European powers there, and they were going to steal from the people and oppress the people and get their stuff. Europe is so weak right now that you could see a scenario where China uses its wealth to pick off a few. Hey, you got a big debt problem there.
Do you think that's what it's doing? It's really interesting, Michael, because we spoke to a guest earlier on who talked about the kind of aggressive business tactics, the way that China says that it thinks in centuries, the fact that it's doing so much with their universities to try to influence the way people think there, not least flooding them with Chinese students. Also, this Chinese super embassy being perhaps one element of that. Yes. I mean, that very much chimes with what you're saying, Michael.
Yes, and so the point is, Europe's weakness matters. I'm a huge Europhile, whatever. I've done media in Europe for 30 years almost now. I love visiting. I love the people. I'm Irish by beverage, if not by birth. And the weak Europe is a problem for us because America, for all the talk of Trump and we're the only. The fact is, China is a big problem. An aggressive Russia that ties with China and Iran and North Korea and who knows who else is a bigger problem. And we need to be on the team together, not just saying, I like the old maps, but rather saying the way the West lives is the best way yet for humans to live. Our embrace of self-government, our belief in relative.
I totally agree with you.
You guys aren't willing to fight for it. You guys are willing to write a check. I'll take the check and let China tell me what to do.
I totally agree with you. And my problem is that I'm not a massive fan of Trump necessarily, but I see him fighting for that. I see him fighting for Western values. I see that fight and that fire in him. I don't see that fire in many of our own politicians, it must be said, here in the UK. And I really think, you've got to believe in those Western values. You've got to say, because otherwise they'll be under threat. They'll be under threat from Islamism, they'll be under threat from China, and that is just a really, really good point. Michael, great to talk to you as always. Michael Graham there, US political commentator, managing editor of Inside Sources. What do you make of what he just said there, the conversation we've just had? 0344 499 1000. Robert's in Sussex and has some thoughts about Donald Trump. You're very welcome to the programme, Robert. What would you like to say?
Hello, thank you very much. Thank you. I've been listening to what he said and the reaction to it over the last few days. Just a brief comment. I think that, in a sense, the man is exhausted. And what I think is interesting about Donald Trump says is what it sort of says about us in relation. I said to some friend a while ago, I said, whatever America does, if you take away whether you like or dislike what it does, I think actually it increasingly makes the UK look ridiculous. And the UK, I think, has been quite ridiculous for about 5 years. In a sense, Donald Trump is a push of thought against what we've kind of had to put up with here.
You're following on. I don't know if you were hearing what Michael Graham said there, but your points have some continuity there, actually, and some of it, I think, you may disagree, Robert, but some of it, I think, just comes from standing up for Western values and actually saying, you can hate Trump's methods or say that he's brash or too casual with his words. There are loads of criticisms you can make of all sorts of leaders, but actually Trump does stand up for what he believes in. You may not believe that that's entirely the right thing, but the Western way of life is something that he absolutely believes in. Capitalism. He absolutely believes in the right way of doing things.
Yeah. He's an extraordinary man. He's been divisive from the start, but you have to think, you've got to put it in context of what we've done. You take the last sort of 6 years, we can go back over it all. Yes, it was a nice sunny spring in March 2020. We'd just left the EU. Was it probably wise to have locked down, although, it was pleasant to do so at the time? No, that was bonkers, and that was one thing. Yeah. Then we sort of came out of that with a cost of living crisis that I didn't really want to buy into, because a lot of people came out of the lockdowns with erratic energy readings and increases everywhere. Then we had you know, Ukraine kicked off 2202 2020.
Well, we can go through it all, Robert, but I think what we can agree on absolutely is that it just seems to me that our country, our way of life, what we hold dear has fallen away even in that short period of time.
We're imbalanced. I mean,
we are imbalanced. That's a very good point.
One point, if I may.
Go for it.
I mean, you know, it's you know, I think Denmark and Greenland is going to take care of itself fine. We don't have to worry about that at all. But we should be worried about things like, you know, Donald Trump probably thinks I can grab Greenland because we can't even keep hold of an army base in Crowborough. How pathetic are we?
Well, it's a very fair point, Robert. You speak a lot of common sense. So you've said to me today has really resonated with me. So I really thank you for that. Let's hear a voice note from Bridget on Trump's speech.
Just regarding Trump's speech, I watched it. I was glued to the TV actually this afternoon. Every single word that president utters is absolutely correct. I mean, you love him or hate him, but he speaks the truth. I watched him with my hubby, and I thought to myself, the lefties must be absolutely eating themselves alive, Peter. And my husband actually made a really brilliant comment, and he said, isn't it refreshing to listen to a strong leader who puts their own people first? And that's what Trump does. Keir Starmer is not there because he's terrified of Trump. He can pretend to be big, tough Keir Starmer, but we all know he isn't. And it's probably killing him that he's meeting up with Nigel Farage. Anyway, great speech by Trump. Have a great day, Peter. Bye for now.
Bridget, thanks for that. And yes, certainly, I think it's easy to be the big tough guy when you're not actually in Davos and you don't have to look into the whites of Trump's eyes. Loads of people getting in touch on driving. Angela says if David Lammy was in charge of the driving test backlog, he would no doubt just axe the test altogether. Matthew has phoned us with his own story from Warrington. Matthew, tell us what happened at your driving test.
Right, I did my driving test with the military in 1991. I was in the Welsh Guards and was just about to get deployed to Northern Ireland on a 2-year residential posting. So we had a MT warrant officer, which is equivalent to Company Sergeant Major, and his nickname was Grunter. And if you like you'd have to drive him to a cafe in Brookwood, buy him breakfast and drive him back, and you get a pass. If he didn't like you, he'd make you sit the full test.
So what happened with you?
It cost me a full English, but it was all right. I got through.
Did you have the full English? That's my question.
No, I was just too nervous. I was only sweating.
You didn't want to bring up the breakfast. No, that wouldn't have been so good. So you just had to drive him to the cafe, buy him the full English, and drive back.
Yeah, if you like you, and that was your pass. But,
wow.
You know, that was back in the day. We didn't back then. You know, I had that license where I could drive a 7.5 ton and everything else before you had to. You didn't do all these tests. It was
yeah.
And it was a crash course because obviously we were needed for Northern Ireland.
Of course, yeah.
So yeah, it was a bit of fun. There was not many people bought him bread. He was a bit on the porky side, I must admit.
Well, I'm sure the full English didn't help that very much. Yeah. Gosh, I'd love a fry up right now, Matthew. That would be great. But I've another hour and 40 minutes to go before I can eat anything.
The fry with a bit of soda bread.
Yeah, have you had one of those?
Yes, mate. Many a time. I was based in Ballykelly for 2 years.
Of course. Yeah, it's very bread based, isn't it? Did you have soda bread and potato bread?
No, I wasn't keen on potato. I like the soda bread, though. I did like the soda bread with your breakfast. You can't get it over here. It's not like in Ireland, is it?
It's true. It's just not the same. You're making me very hungry, Matthew. But listen, thank you for the call. Really appreciate that. Very interesting to hear Matthew's story. Loads of other people have been in touch as well. And whatever your story, I want to hear it. Whatever your thoughts on Trump or whatever else you want to talk about, or perhaps even our next story about Labour handing no need to work benefits to 1.5 million more people. Lots more people out of work and told you don't need to look for work at all. We'll talk to the Taxpayer Alliance about that in a second. Get your views too. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lisa's been in touch and says Donald Trump possibly changing his mind and not grasping the facts regarding the Chagos Islands. Thankfully, Nigel Farage is meeting him in Davos and will keep him right, I've no doubt. Speaking of Davos, actually, Trump's going to meet Zelensky as well, the president of Ukraine. That's going to happen tomorrow. Brian's been in touch and says, with regards to the possibility of Trump pulling out of NATO, he will find that very difficult to do because he uses so many European bases, including our own, to mount strikes elsewhere. So if he pulls out of NATO, he will have to pull out of all the spaces throughout Europe, which will leave him in a weak position. Brian, you'd be right if that would happen. I don't think he's going to pull out of NATO. I think he's quite committed to NATO. It may not seem that way, but in his mind, I think he is. I don't know what's going through his mind. How could I? But he has certainly talked about doing more for NATO. Excuse me, and the importance of NATO, certainly. Donald Trump is everything Starmer is not, says Amanda. Trump puts America and its people first, unlike Starmer, who despises our country and its history and favours those who would do us harm purely for their votes. Lots of people getting in touch about driving as well. Tad says, it doesn't surprise me to learn so many people are paying others to take their driving tests for them. I occasionally use Uber taxis for getting backwards and forwards to hospital when the use of my own car is precluded, and the driver's standards are abysmal. Won't even stop the car and open the door to let the clutch out. Really? Goodness me. And also, thank you to the person who wants to remain anonymous, unsurprisingly, who passed, I use the word loosely, their test in Russia and was given a license in exchange, this person says, for an envelope full of cash. My instructor wouldn't even teach me past the basics, so I'd keep paying for lessons, which is very, very interesting. It wasn't my choice, says this person. I am insanely law-abiding. Well, not perhaps on that occasion. Let's talk now about Labour handing no need to work benefits to 1.5 million more people. We've been told time and time again that the Labour government wants to get the benefits bill down. Keir Starmer tried to do that a few months ago with his backbenchers. They wouldn't let him do that, and now the number of people who are claiming Britain's main benefit without having to work has risen by 1.5 million since Labour came to power. 4.2 million people on universal credit with no work requirements following a surge in mental health claims. Critics say Downing Street has lost control. One of those critics is William Yarwood, who's spokesman for the Taxpayers Alliance. Well, William, great to talk to you again, but you, like me, we're not getting at people who are disabled at all. We're not getting at people who genuinely can't work. But clearly this rise is a huge one. What do you think's behind it, and what should the government do about it, William?
Well, good afternoon, Peter. Thanks for having me back on the show. And yeah, I think that when various GPs, I think there was over 100 GPs across the country, told the health secretary that they think there's been an overdiagnosis of mental health illnesses, I think you have to sit up and listen, don't you? And the health secretary himself has said towards the end of last year that he's going to open a review into things like anxiety, depression, other what we call mild mental illnesses to figure out what is going on. My view, Peter, on this is I think that there's been an issue regarding how we actually do assessments in this country. So before COVID, the majority of assessments for universal credit and for PIP were done in person, I think around 80 to 90%. Post-COVID, Peter, that's dropped dramatically. I mean, in 2024, almost 80% of all assessments for benefits was done online. Now, I don't know about you. I mean, we're talking online right now. We can't properly assess one another about, you know, our own mental illnesses and our own
body language, whether you're telling the truth.
Exactly.
There are loads of ways. I mean, there's some things that can definitely be done remotely. I don't need to know exactly what you're thinking or your body language or whatever. I really need to listen to the words. I can look at your face. But certainly if I were assessing you, if I were making a decision involving public money, involving giving you benefits, I would want to meet you in person. I don't think that's unreasonable.
No, it's not even remotely unreasonable. And like I said, Peter, that was not uncontroversial a few years ago. I mean, I understand, like you said, there are sometimes things have to be done remotely and online, but that was less than 10% of the overall people.
And I tell you something, there'll be a load of people as well who will not put their camera on as well. There'll be a lot of that too, because I mean that happens. It's often a thing to do with the younger generation, or sometimes people of all generations who don't want to be seen on Zoom calls and so on. That's part of it as well. And you can really tell a lot more when you're looking at someone, when you see them, even if it's a visual image, than if you don't.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to bring it back to anxiety and depression, I mean, to move it also just to PIP as well, we at the TPA just last year released a welfare dashboard, which people can search up on Google, which actually shows you the increase in anxiety and depression, as well as a bunch of other illnesses, all illnesses that you can possibly name over the last few years. And what you notice, Peter, is it's not the serious illnesses, it's not the serious conditions that have dramatic increases. You know, they fluctuate up and down based upon who's actually got them in the country. Well, anxiety and depression have a straight line from 2019 to 2024. I mean, I think in 2019, there was about 26,000 people claiming for anxiety and depression. And in 2024, there was over 140,000.
I mean, that's an astonishing rise. There will be more people, and we do need to be sympathetic to people who have anxiety and depression. I'm one of them. I take pills for it every single day. Thankfully, I can work, and work helps me, actually, with my anxiety and depression. It hasn't been an issue for quite a while. But we're in a situation where that rise can't be just to do with COVID lockdowns. That may well be part of it, but there's got to be much more to this, William.
100%, and I think hopefully the Health Secretary's review will look into this, because like you said, we know the numbers and we know the growth, but it's very hard to tell on individual cases, because you'd have to talk to the individuals doing it.
Sure.
But just to go back to the welfare system more broadly, I mean, in the last budget, in the autumn budget that we saw from Reeves, her changes mean that by the end of this decade, welfare spending is going to be an extra £16 billion a year. I mean, the last welfare reform bill that they tried to put through didn't end up saving £5 billion, but ended up costing taxpayers an extra 300 to 400 to 500 million pounds. So while I may agree with the Health Secretary's review, my concern, Peter, is even if we find out what the real problem is, I don't actually think this Labour government has the stomach to do it, because fundamentally, most Labour MPs don't get elected to do welfare reform or take benefits away from people, and that's just unfortunately the political reality we live in.
William, very interesting. Speaking to William Yarwood there, spokesman for the Taxpayers Alliance. Laura's in Wiltshire and she has some thoughts on this. She's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Laura, thanks for the call. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter.
Hi there.
I'm just interested listening to your call about people being signed off work for no reason. And I am completely with you. If you're disabled, if you've got a problem, actually my husband's blind but works, so I'm totally on top of this. I was in the GP's today in Salisbury picking up a prescription for an elderly neighbour. Young guy walks in, he's about 26. Very agitated, said to the receptionist, I need you to sign me off work. My phone's been stolen. I can't do it. And she's like, okay, you can do it online. I haven't got access. She said, okay, well, what do you want me to do? I need you to sign me off work for 6 weeks. You need to say on it. And then he became very calm and said, you need to say that I'm visibly agitated and very distressed. And I watched this happen. I was the only person there. And I was absolutely gobsmacked.
Yeah.
And he said, and she said, well, how long do you want to be signed off? And he went, well, 6 weeks. And she said, well, would you like to pick up that document in person or online? He went, oh, well, online. And to be fair, she said, but I thought you said your phone was smashed up. He said, I can probably find someone to get it for me. But are you going to say that I'm visibly and physically distressed?
And that's just one insight. That's just a snapshot, Laura, but it tells a wider story, doesn't it, of the pressure that is put on people like receptionists, like GPs. I mean, I remember one GP saying to me, like, we will have 200 people on a Monday morning who want appointments. Within the practice, we'll be able to do 80 or 90 appointments throughout the day with all the different doctors that are there. So the people who just want a sick note extended, who just want a signature, essentially, a sick line, well, we're just going to say yes to that. And with someone like that, putting that pressure on.
I did ask the receptionist afterwards, being a 60-year-old woman, I walked up and said, sorry to be difficult, but is that guy going to have to actually see a GP? He said, well, it'll be dead to get the sick note. She said, well, it'll be down to the doctor to decide. She got quite,
defensive, yeah.
Said, but how would he know if he hasn't actually met the guy?
Yeah.
She said, well, it'll be down to the doctor to decide. And at which point, you're being aggressive.
Yeah.
But, that's one...
I just find it very hard to believe, Laura, that a doctor's receptionist might be a bit snippy.
When was the last time you went again, Peter.
Well, listen, the thing that people often say is if we just put them at Dover, if we just put the doctor's receptionist at the border, maybe it would solve the problem. Laura,
probably right, mate.
Thanks for that snapshot. Very, very interesting. I love it when people tell me their stories, their experiences. I love your opinions too, but I love your stories and different bits of knowledge, and Laura talking about that as well. Tim's been in touch from Southampton and says, Peter, no one disagrees with Trump that Greenland is of vital strategic importance, but the Danish and other European NATO members have collectively failed to defend it and presumed that the US would do this and continue to pick up the tab. If Europe pulled its weight on defence, then Greenland would have never become an issue, says Tim in Southampton. Loads to discuss in all of this. Lots of people want to talk about mental health, about Ed Miliband, about Trump, about Greenland, about driving as well. Lots of people sending their stories in. We're going to do that. There's plenty of time to do it between now and 7 o'clock on Talk Drive. But we're also going to talk about something that a lot of the media is absolutely ignoring. And as you know, on these shows, if you tell me to cover something, I'm going to cover it. We've been covering Iran a lot more than a lot of other media outlets, and we're going to talk to an expert in just a second. Kazra Arabi, a spokesman for United Against Nuclear Iran. He's going to be in the studio and he's going to tell us what the truth is, what we need to know, and what the UK and us as citizens as well should be doing about it. You're going to want to hear what he has to say. He's a very convincing young man. He has a lot of expertise. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much for all your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes. We'll get back to those in a second, but one thing a lot of the media hasn't been doing properly, hasn't been doing for a long, in the depth that it needs to, is talk about Iran. What is going on there? There have been so many protests. There's been a sort of shrugging of the shoulders saying, oh, it's all died down a bit. Well, actually, why has it died down? Because of the brutal repression of the Iranian state and the fact that they're killing so many people and putting off so many people from even attempting to stand up against them. We have a big role here as citizens and also as a country, and that's why I want to talk to Kazra Arabi, who's spokesman for United Against Nuclear Iran. Kazra, great to have you in the studio. Thanks for coming in. Tell me your thoughts on really where we are with what's going on in Iran, because I think a lot of people have just sort of said, well, it's died down now, but there are reasons behind that, aren't there?
Well, it's not died down.
Yeah.
Peter, we've witnessed crimes against humanity. We really have. As many as 20,000 unarmed civilians were killed on the streets of Iran during around 12, 13 days of protest. Now, it's been more than 15 days now, so just over 2 weeks, where there has been a complete internet shutdown. The regime imposed that to censor the bloodshed on the streets, to cut the Iranians from the outside world, and also to delay the international response. And on delaying the international response, I believe they've succeeded. Now, the US has adopted a very tough posture, and President Trump has been absolutely right to threaten.
Well, he said help is coming, but it hasn't, has it?
There are practical considerations for a military strike against the regime, and a military strike against the regime would have to really dismantle the suppressive apparatus And when we're talking about that suppressive apparatus, it is extensive. The Islamic regime only has one pillar to survive, and that's suppression. So over the past decade or so, it has really been investing to build up the capabilities of this suppressive apparatus so that when protests do happen, they go on the streets, brutally suppress them. And these individuals aren't, you know, normal individuals. They are radicalized to the teeth. Indoctrination, ideological indoctrination, and Islamist extremist ideology makes up for more than 50% of their training. And we saw that what they learnt in their textbooks, they deployed on the streets in the most brutal ways possible. We have had reports from doctors that even those who have been detained have been injected with substances that makes the individual suicidal. That's the brutality of this regime. There are reports that chemical weapons have been used on the streets of Iran. Now, President Trump's adopted a very tough posture, threatened military action, threatened military strikes if the bloodshed continues. Where has Europe been? Where has Keir Starmer been? Absolutely silent in the face of brutality on the streets of Iran.
And another bunch of people that you will have certainly noticed who have been incredibly quiet about this have been so many people who will go on and on and on about the Palestinian people, the Judi Denches of this world, the Juliet Stevensons of this world, the Jeremy Corbyns of this world, the Zara Sultanas of this world, who appear to be absolutely nowhere on Iran.
Nowhere.
If you care about human rights, if you care about the freedom of women, loads of women's rights groups as well, rape has been used as a weapon, that's certainly been reported as well. Where are the women's rights group on this? You must be very disappointed in this, or is this just what happens? Is this just how the world reacts?
It's not surprising, because I believe those individuals don't care for human rights. I actually think it's very ideological. Now, why has the mainstream been silent on Iran? Why has the mainstream been silent on the protests? Why has it been silent on the repression that's been going on? It's because it doesn't fit the mainstream narrative, if we're being open and honest. You know, the mainstream narrative is hostile to Trump. The mainstream narrative is hostile to Israel, particularly hostile to Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister. Now, in Iran, you have a situation where the people have been supporting Trump, have been calling on Trump to strike the regime. Israel, amongst the Iranian population, despite this regime being the most anti-Semitic regime since Nazi Germany, the Iranian people are probably the most pro-Israel people in the Middle East. When there were strikes going on against the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard by Israel, the people were supportive of it. Not surprising, because it's the same IRGC that's been massacring the Iranian people on the streets. So this mainstream narrative that's hostile to Trump, that's hostile to Israel, prevailed. The mainstream narrative, those on the left, would rather side with the Ayatollah than admit that Trump and Israel are right on a particular issue.
Do you think that pervades into media coverage as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we've seen it. We've seen mainstream outlets, and this is really rubbing salt in the wound, and this is really frustrating. You hear that we kept hearing on major outlets, including the BBC, Hamas-run health ministry, and pumping out figures, Hamas-run health ministry. Without questioning that number, they were just echoing Hamas-run health ministry, taking that number at face value. The same individuals have refused to report on Iran because their excuse has been, oh, it's difficult to verify stuff on the ground. We've had no access, so that's why we've not been reporting. Well, why are they doing the same? Why are they reporting Hamas?
It's
run health
hypocritical.
ministry? It's double standards to the extreme.
Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, has called the Iranian ambassador in. They've talked about sanctions economically. Do you think that's enough? What do you think actually, aside from going in, aside from military action, which I don't think is on the cards for the UK for lots of reasons, what should we be doing? What would you be urging the government to do?
Let's make it clear, I'm not calling for British military action. We don't have the capabilities to get military involved, but we should be supporting President Trump, who has threatened military action, and we should be doing absolutely in everything in our power to isolate the regime diplomatically. Put a threat on the table. If this continues, you will be isolated diplomatically entirely. But more importantly, why is Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the supreme leader of the Iranian regime who has been ordering the massacre on the streets, why has he got an office in London? He doesn't have a right to have an office in London. Why has that not been shut down? By the way, what happens in Iran, and this is important for your viewers, for your listeners, what happens in Iran doesn't stay in Iran. We should care about what happens in Iran because it affects us here in Britain. There have been more than 20 foiled terror plots on British soil since 2022 that are linked to the Iranian regime. My best friend was stabbed in London 4 times, British Iranian journalist, in Wimbledon by the Iranian regime.
It's happening here.
It's happening here. It's happening right here. They have built an infrastructure to nurture Islamist radicalization, using the same methods as ISIS and Al-Qaeda, to nurture Islamist radicalization and anti-Semitism. Beyond that, what can we do? Why has the regime's oligarchs, why have they got assets in this country using the corrupt money that's been funneled through? The UK took a tough posture against the Russian oligarchs, but when it comes to the Iranian oligarchs, they've been looking the other way. I hope that changes. It's not too late. Set up a task force, identify, sanction, freeze the assets of these corrupt oligarchs. Their children live here. Send them back to Iran. These are sons and daughters, the Aghazadehs, as we call them in Farsi, the sons and daughters of the IRGC commanders that are massacring Iranian civilians on the streets. And those on the streets, by the way, they share the same values. They want the same values that we have in the UK. This is a very secular, liberal, pro-democracy movement. They're calling for support. We shouldn't ignore them.
When it comes to our viewers and listeners who want to be helpful, who want to support in some way, but it might feel quite far away, it might feel very removed, it might not feel like something they can do on a practical basis, there are lots of other things in their lives. What would you appeal to our viewers and listeners to I mean, you've made your case very, very strongly there, but practical ways in which people can support, put pressure on government, spread the word as well about the fact that there are a load of people in Iran who are just like us, who want to live in a free society. They're not there. It's not happening at the moment. The peace, the freedom, the democracy, the free speech that we have here, yes, it's under threat, and we talk about it every single day, but nonetheless, we live in a much, much freer society here, and, you know, understandably, the Iranian people want that.
The Iranian people, we should look at this, step back and look at this. This is a fight. The Iranian people are on the front lines in the fight against Islamist extremism, the same Islamist extremism that affects us here. Now, the regime has been massacring them on the streets, and it's pulled the plug on the internet to completely shut them off from the outside world. What your viewers, what your listeners can do, let's make sure Iran is on the agenda. On social media, every post that you see coming from inside the country, share it. All eyes on Iran. Remember the pro-Hamas crowd? How they use social media to apply pressure on government to, for example, accept a Palestinian state, even though, by the way, that ran against Britain's interests. It ran against Donald Trump's interests, our strategic ally. It ran against that interest, but the pressure led to Keir Starmer doing that. Let's keep Iran on the agenda. Let's make sure on every single social media post, every single hashtag, this is what everyone can do. Keep Iran on the news, all eyes remaining on Iran, because the massacre hasn't stopped. We're hearing that those who are being detained are being charged as muharebs. Muhareb, in the Islamic penal code of Iran's regime, means waging war against God. It requires the most severe punishment, not just execution, but torture prior to these individuals' death. These are young individuals, no different to myself, no different to any of your listeners and viewers. They're ordinary people wanting a normal life. We have to make sure that Iran remains on the agenda, so the government can't just brush it under the carpet and move on like it does with other issues.
Khosrow, great to talk to you. Khosrow Arabi, who is a spokesman for United Against a Nuclear Iran. Thanks for coming into the studio. If you've thoughts on what Khosrow has said, do give me a shout. 0344 499 1000. We will take a bit of a breather and talk about the sport next. Lots to discuss on Trump, on Greenland, on Iran, as we say, and on driving tests too. Lots of people want to get in touch about that. Stay with us here on Talk Drive.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's talk about the sport now. Dean Scoggins is with us, the Deputy Head of Sport at The Sun. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good, thank you.
Well, Donald Trump may have, the ice may have melted slightly in his military campaign. For Manchester City, they were well beaten in the Arctic Circle. A shock result. The club has apologised for the result, but they've gone further today, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Never mind Greenland, though. The Man City players have, well, they've acted a little bit quicker than everybody else, haven't they, in other political circles. But yeah, they've raised just under 10,000 quid, which, let's be honest, is not a great deal of money for these guys. But having said that, they are refunding the supporters who went. So it was 374 fans who went into the Arctic Circle to see them lose to Bodo Glimt. They were 3-0 down. Rodri was sent off. It's not an easy place to go, I would say. You know, they have to play on a plastic pitch because of the weather up there. So it's a little out of their comfort zone, and City showed
but still,
it.
But they shouldn't have lost.
No, not with the players that they had on show. Erling Haaland started, obviously his homeland as well, so he got plenty of grief afterwards. But they've raised £9,357 to refund all the fans their ticket prices, and there's a joint statement that's gone out from the leadership team, and basically I think the best part of it is covering the cost of these tickets for the fans who travel to Bodo is the least we can do.
I mean, it is. Yeah, it is the least you can do. Yeah,
and there's been a few fans who have said, well, what about our travel costs and stuff like that? But obviously that's very difficult for a club to put their finger on for your 7-star hotel on the way there.
Exactly.
But still a nice response from Manchester City, but it wasn't a nice gesture.
It's a nice gesture after a terrible performance. Tell us about Crystal Palace, big transfer news. Who wants to leave?
Yeah, I mean, poor old Crystal Palace. Like, never mind the Man City fans who went to watch Champions League football in the Arctic Circle, but Palace fans they've lost Eberechi Eze last summer, their star player. Then their captain Mark Gahey has joined Manchester City in this window. Their manager Oliver Glasner is saying he's leaving at the end of the season, and has basically, opened the door to leave before that, has been complaining about signings and money spent ever since they won the FA Cup last year. And now Jean-Philippe Mateta, the striker, has basically said he wants to leave in this window as well. So yeah, if you've got not very good at all. So Aston Villa are very interested, as are Juventus. So he's nailed his colours to the mast there, Mateta, and basically said, I've had enough of this. Or everyone else is leaving. He basically wants to go as well. So if you've got boots this weekend, Palace fans, you might want to take them. There's not many others available.
Take us through tonight's action in the Champions League.
Yeah, so another big night. Obviously, Man City lost last night. Arsenal won comfortably last night, and so did Spurs. Shock horror, Spurs had a great result against Dortmund. But tonight, the most interesting game is Marseille-Liverpool, where you have Mohamed Salah potentially back in the Liverpool starting lineup after AFCON, and obviously there was the big hoo-ha between Salah and Slot before he went to AFCON, so Slot will be welcoming back with open arms in the Champions League. And then Mason Greenwood, also a very controversial figure. Mason Greenwood plays for Marseille, so lots of eyes will be on him this evening. Liverpool win takes them back into the automatic qualification spots with only one match day to go. Newcastle play PSV and Chelsea play Paphos. Both Newcastle and Chelsea, they will be games that they've got down for 3 points and to get themselves back into the knockout reckoning. So as we go into the last two rounds of the Champions League, it's sort of all on the line in this new format.
Hopefully they'll have more luck than Man City did. Anyway, Dean, thank you as always. Dean Scoggins, who is Deputy Head of Sport at The Sun. Now then, time to find out how you could be in with a chance of winning the trip of a lifetime to San Francisco. Talk is giving away flights, a 3-night stay at a 4-star intercontinental hotel, and £2,500 of spending money, plus tickets to the Super Bowl to top it all off. Listen for details of how you can enter.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 22nd January 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at TalkSport.com. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
Thanks to everybody who has been in touch on all sorts of issues on Greenland. Steve says, great show, Trump has a point. If China or Russia landed in a remote northern part of Greenland and set up a camp or base, would Denmark be able to protect it? I doubt it. And then would NATO go to war over this very barren country? I doubt it. I think China or Russia will not intervene if Greenland is American territory. So Trump is trying to protect the people of Greenland and protect any future potential conflict. That's Steve in Plymouth there. What do you think of what he had to say? David in Worcestershire says, these benefits claimants soaring is ridiculous. 80% of claims done online and then the health secretary doing a review. A review means kicking the can down the road. That's this government's problem. It loves kicking the can down the road, and important things, Chagos, things like Rwanda, they did not review, says David in Worcestershire. So very interesting thoughts on that. And yeah, they know what they want to do and they can act quickly when they need to. British Steel, they recalled Parliament. I know I bang on about that every now and again, but if they can do that for one thing, they can do it for other things as well. The rape gangs inquiry would be something I would highly recommend that they take much swifter action on. Peter's in Dorset and has some thoughts on Trump and Greenland. He's given me a ring at 0344 499 1000. Peter, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hello there. Good evening to you. I really enjoy your show.
Thank you.
And it's really good to hear such a calm voice on the TV coming across. Just a quickie. I think it's very clear. Okay, Donald Trump has said that a strong America is a strong NATO. Yes, of course it is. But however, I think there's another side to that coin, and that is, in some respects, saying that it's letting Europe off the hook. And when I say off the hook, I think Trump needs to keep the squeeze on, because he needs to get Europe out of its comfort zone. We need strength in Greenland, we need strength in Europe, and we need the Europeans to be strong in Europe. In fact, we need, wherever America is not, we need whoever is in that part of the world needs to be strong. We need to make the Chinese and the Russians completely clear to them that wherever they are, they haven't got a weak link to start spiking. And
do you think they see that weakness, Peter? Do you think do you think the Chinese and the Russians see that? For example, when we're saying yes to this embassy, for example, the Chinese sense that weakness.
I think that the British side of things is is even worse than what's going on in Europe. What's happening with Starmer and what's gone on with Chagos and all the rest of it in this country, I think is frankly sick. That's the first thing. That the Europeans have spent so much time walking around like puffed up pheasants that they just don't know what's going on, and they haven't gotten their act together. And of course, China and Russia are watching probably with more than interest on what's going on, and what they're looking at the UK with, I have no idea, because we are so weak. It's ridiculous.
And so many people, Peter, so many people making that point today and really feeling as if there's so much more that Starmer could do, or perhaps another leader. Peter, thank you for your kind comments and your wise words as well. Lots of common sense in that. I want to play a couple of voice notes before the news. This first one from Dave on Donald Trump.
Hi Peter, Dave in Manchester. On my 60th birthday, I thought I'd drop you a quick voice note. Anyway, in regard to Trump's speech, I just can't believe it's taken the leader of the free world to rip European leaders a new one. Absolutely 100% correct on net zero policies, or should we say dogma, ideology. It will impoverish countries. Mass migration, it will impoverish countries. It will ruin countries. Why aren't European leaders waking up to this? Is this by design? I think it is. And furthermore, two-tier Keir strikes again on Chagos and Greenland. It's all right to have a referendum for the Greenland people, but it's not okay for the Chagosians. Let's get Nigel in number 10, and then we'll see how it all changes.
Dave, thanks for that, and happy 60th birthday. Let's hear from Dan.
What exactly are you going to do then, Prime Minister? Are you going to travel to Beijing next week and seek out new trade deals and rely on China whilst eroding our friendship with the US? That's not going to work long term. I think Europe as a whole needs to sit down with President Trump and realise that without the might of the US military or economic deals, they're nothing. We will never stop the threats from Russia, China on the horizon.
Big questions from Dan, from Dave and from Peter as well. Lots to unpack in all of this. Loads of people want to have their say. We're going to talk to Michael Yaki and Colonel James Sunderland in just a minute, and you in the next hour before 7 o'clock. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us and Talk Drive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, it's Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thanks so much for all the comments that are coming in about Greenland, about Trump, about the Chagos Islands, about driving as well. There are so many different people talking about the cheaters in driving and theory tests, both the practical test and the theory test as well. Donald Trump has said that Europe needs to up its game. It's attacked it in lots of different ways, but he's also said he's not going to use the military to invade Greenland, which is a sigh of relief all round on that one, although lots of us thought it wouldn't happen anyway. We'll talk to James Sunderland, Colonel James Sunderland, about that, and Michael Yaki. We'll have a yak with Yaki in a minute, the US political analyst. We'll talk to you about SAS chiefs in the last-ditch effort to kill Starmer's Troubles Act. Samara Gill has been doing some reporting on that, and we'll look at that a little bit later on in the programme and find out what's in the sun tomorrow, and get all of your comments, calls, texts, tweets and voice notes, however you want to contact me, smoke signals, carrier pigeons, telepathy, however you want to get your point across. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 7222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, send me a voice note less than a minute please to the main number, WhatsApp text messages to the main number, phone calls to the main number, which is of course 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss between now and 7 o'clock here on Talk Drive. And Kevin O'Sullivan will, of course, be here between 7 and 10. Kevin's doing Drive next week. I'm back on my weekend shows from this weekend. So on Saturday and on Sunday between 10 and 1, I will be here. So I hope you can join me for those as well on Drive today, tomorrow and Friday too. So I'm a busy boy. Let's talk about Donald Trump. Earlier this afternoon, the US President, he's in Davos at the moment in Switzerland at the World Economic Forum. He started his speech in Davos by attacking Europe.
And I love Europe, and I want to see Europe go good, but it's not heading in the right direction. In recent decades, it became conventional wisdom in Washington and European capitals that the only way to grow a modern Western economy was through ever-increasing government spending, unchecked mass migration, and endless foreign imports.
Donald Trump there speaking in Davos, but he did go on to say that he wouldn't be using his military, the US military, to take on Greenland, to invade.
We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland.
Is that a reasonable request? Let's speak to Michael Yaki, US political analyst. He's a former senior advisor to Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. Also with us is Colonel James Sunderland, a military expert, former MP, and he, of course, knows his onions on all of this. Michael, perhaps we'll start with you. I expect you were breathing a sigh of relief like I was when you were told that US troops are not going to go into Greenland. When Donald Trump talks about needing Greenland, needing it for security purposes, needing it for strategic purposes, do you think he has a point, Michael?
Well, I think that the issue of climate change and what it's done to the Arctic sea ice and therefore the sea lanes between the Pacific and the Atlantic have really raised the stakes in terms of whether or not the submarine fleets of China and Russia are now at a much more precarious position for us in terms of our own security. You add to that the fact that there are probably now the ability to sort of look at sinking offshore oil rigs in the Arctic Sea. We'll talk about the environmental consequence of that later, but in terms of exploiting the resources there, and then you begin to see that there is a little bit of a sea rush. I won't call it a land rush yet, for the Arctic, and the United States, because of our position, does have, I think, a very strategic interest there. The question is, how do you obtain that strategic interest? And you have in here a president who up until today was essentially insinuating that he could take it by force, and now I guess he's going to resort to tariffs and other means in order to try and coerce Denmark and the EU into giving it up.
When you see the reaction of many European leaders to this, Macron, Merz from Germany, of course, our own Keir Starmer is not even in Davos, do you see it as one of strength from where you're sitting?
I do, and I think it's important to use strength when you're talking about Donald Trump. That's the only thing that he can respect. And
does he really look at Keir Starmer saying, I won't yield on this, and I'm not going to compromise my values and principles? Do you feel that that Trump feels intimidated by that in any way, or even met by that?
I don't know if it's intimidation as much as just the reality was, as advisors probably had him on the airplane for a few hours and just said, you got to take force off the table. The markets just went down over a percentage point. If you don't do it, they're going to go down even more. The economics and the people, and think about the people who are advising Donald Trump. A lot of them are based on pure economics, right? The tech bros, the resource people, the people who have been advising him about the untapped resources in Greenland. And you saw today, even in his speech, he was talking about national security, and then he slipped in the word intentionally or unintentionally development.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that I mean spoke volumes in terms of what I think the real aim of any agreement will be for Greenland. It may not be taking Greenland, but it may be taking Greenland's resources.
Just on Starmer and his reaction to this, he spoke at Prime Minister's questions a little bit earlier on today. I just want to play a little clip of this and then get your reaction, Michael. Here's Keir Starmer earlier today.
President Trump deployed words on Chagos yesterday that were different to his previous words of welcome and support when I met him in the White House. He deployed those words yesterday for the express purpose of putting pressure on me and Britain in relation to my values and principles on the future of Greenland. Mr. Speaker, he wants me to yield on my position, and I'm not going to do so.
It's interesting with this Chagos issue as well, Michael, because that's something a lot of our viewers and listeners feel really, really strongly about, because we have a Prime Minister in this country who, it would appear, and I think this is reasonable analysis, is saying that the Chagosians don't have a right to self-determination because of international law or an advisory opinion by the International Court of Justice, but the Greenlanders do have a right of self-determination, and he's essentially saying, I'm standing up to Donald Trump on that principle. He's trying to undermine me. I just wonder what your view is on that as an American, as someone who's worked in politics for a very long time, seeing how Starmer is laying this out.
Well, I mean, I think that in terms of Chagos, I mean, the president, basically blasted the prime minister for the lease back of Diego Garcia, for example, and not. This is a president who likes owning things, right? He likes to own real estate. So the idea of leasing is anathema to him. If he doesn't own it, it's not any good. So I think that's really underlying the whole thing about Diego Garcia. The fact is, having a secure lease on a facility for 99 years is pretty much into infinity, right? But the question of whether or not, what constitutes self-determination in terms of a crown territory versus an area that has been undefined but claimed by another country, has been recognized in United States treaties as such. I think we're talking apples and oranges, but I do believe that something that Starmer said has gotten a burr under Trump's saddle, as we say in the United States, and I think it's going to help Starmer, who people may think is not as strong as he should be, but standing up to the United States is a very good, I think, political move. And I think from the standpoint of the United States, putting that anywhere in jeopardy gets a lot of people nervous. Again, let's go back to the economics, the London banking and financial ties to the United States and our financial sectors is something that we just can't breach. It's not, and in fact, for all of Europe, we can't breach it. And you saw today, by the way, the Danish Public Employees Pension Fund just sold off a bunch of U.S. Treasuries, which I think was a warning shot of the sort of
on the market.
One of the economic bazookas that the EU has.
On the market rallying to some degree after Trump's comments as well. Michael, thank you as always. Michael Yaki there, US political analyst, former senior advisor to Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. Colonel James Sunderland is with me now, military expert and former MP. James, do you agree with Michael Yaki? Do you think that Trump is reacting to the strength that Starmer is showing here?
I'm not convinced. I mean, I think Starmer has no choice. So the power that he showed today in the House of Commons and the strength and the voice, it's what any Prime Minister should be doing. I mean, the whole idea of taking Greenland by force or otherwise is complete nonsense. It's sovereign territory which belongs to Denmark. The UK and America, NATO, would be going to the aid of countries who have been unable to self-determine for years and years. So the idea that Trump is going to put troops on the ground and invade a country where he's already got troops stationed is nonsense. It'd be like the British government invading Aldershot.
Yeah, and when you see Trump rowing back on what he has said here, do you think that's just part of the Trump playbook? Is that just what he does? I personally, I'm not the expert, you quite literally are. It didn't seem to me from anything that Trump had done or said that there was ever any chance of any invasion of Greenland. I just thought a lot of people were massively overreacting to that.
I think Trump says what he thinks. I think the link between his gob and his brain is probably quite short. And I think ultimately he's probably been thinking it. He's probably been sleeping it for a while. He fires from the hip. I mean, he likes to indulge journalists that fly with him on Air Force One. The list goes on. But ultimately he's rowing back now, I suspect, because the idea is daft. I think his own people, his own advisors have said, rein it in. It's nonsense. He's clearly hit a nerve when it comes to Western governments and NATO. I mean, the whole idea of the US taking Greenland by force is absolute nonsense.
So what do you think happens now then, James? Diplomatically, politically, what actually happens now, do you think?
Well, I don't think the US position is about defence at all. They talk about the high north and the need to sort of strategically defend that part of the globe. But ultimately, it's NATO territory. Article 5 applies anyway. And so I don't think that defence is the reason. I think it's a smokescreen perhaps for minerals. It's about mineral welfare. I mean, why not do a deal with Greenland? Why not sit down with the Danish government and do an exploration deal? Look at what's happening in the Falklands right now. You've got drilling agreed in the Falklands for oil. That's an agreement that's been signed between the British government and the Falklands government. I think the Argentinians have got a part to play in that as well. So ultimately, this is about diplomacy. It's about treaty. It's about sitting down and talking. And this rhetoric about taking Greenland by force, what he said today, it's a place that we want. I mean, come on. Let's just get real. There's a complete absence of common sense in this. In the same way, there's a complete absence of common sense in the British government handing Chagos over to Mauritius. It's complete nonsense.
Well, let me ask you a similar question to the one I asked Michael Yaki a little bit earlier on. Does Starmer have moral authority here? Michael Yaki said it was apples and oranges. I disagree with him. I think if you're talking about self-determination, it's a perfectly valid thing to say the Chagosians haven't had it, whereas Starmer says as a point of principle the Greenlanders should have it. I'd like both groups of people to have self-determination. I think that would be fair and reasonable. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's no question at all that 57,000 Greenlanders have a right to self-determination. The territory belongs to Greenland and Denmark, and quite clearly any issues relating to Greenland is an issue for Greenland and Denmark alone. And it's the same thing with the Chagosians. I mean, this ridiculous idea to hand Chagos to Mauritius is bad on several fronts. It's banned. It's bad fiscally, it's banned for the Chagosians, it's just really, really awful for them. They do have a right to self-determination, and clearly it's really bad for the UK in terms of defence, strategic considerations. I mean, I've been to the Chagos, I've been to Davos, I've served there, I know what's there. And the whole idea that the UK is willingly going to give up its only sovereign territory in the Indian Ocean, its only territory east of Suez, is absolutely ridiculous. And my colleagues in the House of Commons are quite right to draw Starmer's stupidity to the public attention.
James, as always, thank you. That's James Sunderland there, Colonel James Sunderland, military expert and former MP. Rob's in Southport. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000 with his thoughts on this. Rob, what do you think? You're very welcome to the programme.
Thanks, Peter. Excellent show as always.
Thank you.
Right, strategic thinking, okay? Trump clearly holds strategic thinking. He's looking globally across the piece. He's aware of the melting ice cap up in the Arctic, which is opening new potential sea routes and new threats in that region of the globe. Putin's building up his nuclear presence in that area now. Trump's very aware of this global positioning. And obviously, to me, the leaders in Europe simply aren't. And they're not in a position to do anything about it. They've been dragging their heels with military spending, which Trump has complained about, quite rightly. And you look at the piece now, and you look at the leaders in Europe. Look at Starmer. Has he got any strategic vision, thinking? No. Come on. Look what he's done with the Chagos. Ridiculously stupid.
Do you think Starmer understands what Trump's up to? Do you think he can see it from his perspective, or does he just cast his eyes to the ceiling and just say, here we go again?
I'm not sure. I wish I could answer that question, Peter. I don't think, as a lawyer, remember this guy's a lawyer, and he's surrounded by union leader MPs in the main. I don't think there's an ounce of strategic thinking ability within him. He hasn't even got a strategic plan for the UK economy, let alone looking across the globe and potential rising threats. And I mean, look into Europe, Brussels, where's their strategic plan?
That's a very interesting point. Rob,
the last plan they had was to throw all the doors open, free movement, and look where that's led us. I don't think, I think there's so much self-interest within Europe. They're looking inward. They're not looking outward. I don't think they've got the skill or vision to be able to do that, Peter. And that's the worry. And they need to tune into what Trump's looking at. There's been years of appeasement under Obama and Biden, where they've just walked around for years shaking hands and smiling with everyone and doing nothing, whilst ISIS arose and caused all those problems in that theatre and other, and emboldened Putin to do what he's doing in Ukraine. And I just don't think our leaders in Europe have got that strategic thinking even, or will. They're not investing enough
that's a whole other issue as well. Rob, listen, thank you very much indeed, Rob in Southport. There are a lot of common sense in that. Thank you to Rob, and he's come to the right place, the home of common sense, because this is Talk Drive. We're going to talk in just a second about a story that you want to talk about. I know there'll be people who will have a view on this. Now, SAS chiefs in a last-ditch effort to kill Starmer's Troubles Act. Samara Gill's been looking into this, our reporter here at Talk. We'll talk to Mark Francois as well, the Shadow Defence Minister. Lots of military families, lots of veterans, lots of people who are serving. Listen to this show and we'll want the update, the latest on all of this. You're going to get it in just a second here on Talk Drive. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a big issue about what the government does in terms of legislation is in regard to Troubles veterans who served in Northern Ireland, the 300,000 people who donned uniforms and helped, I think, bring Northern Ireland to the peace process, helped defend us, helped keep us safe, and allowed my generation to grow up in peace. The Belfast Agreement 27 years ago now would not have happened, 28 years ago, would not have happened without the great bravery and distinction of many servicemen and women who served this country in Northern Ireland. There were some who fell below the standards that the vast majority upheld. There are some who feel that they were unfairly targeted as a result of this. It's a big live political issue right now, and it has huge implications for people serving at the moment. There have been an awful lot of people, SAS, senior people, there have been former generals who have said that the government needs to change tack on this. Samara Gill's been looking into it for us. Samara's our reporter here at Talk. Samara, just tell me your thoughts on this and what you've been finding out today.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to talk to veterans and, of course, Mark Francois, who was down there. There was obviously also the Shadow Defence Minister among others from the Conservative Party, who are really against Keir Starmer's proposed bill. It's called the Northern Ireland Troubles Bill, and it's kind of a complicated situation. It's essentially, as you said, Owen, you probably know much more about it than me, having almost lived through it, but it is about protecting those that did fight during that time and those that were involved. So at its core, it's sort of about a dispute on how the UK should handle those unresolved killings and conduct that happened during that 30-year period. And essentially, Labour wants to remove the conditional immunity that shielded all the British troops from prosecution. So it's quite serious stuff. And when I went down and spoke to the veterans, they were fearing for their lives if this bill potentially would get through. So it would be great just to have a look at some of their reactions down there in Parliament Square today, and just see what they have to say about Keir Starmer's plans.
Guys have been standing out in the rain for over an hour already, protesting against something called a remedial order. What that means in pub English is if Labour vote this through today and then it goes through the Lords, it would have the practical effect of allowing civil prosecutions, often at the behest of Sinn Féin, to put some of these people in the dock for defending their country against IRA terrorists.
What would you have to say to Keir Starmer right now, the man in that building?
I'd say, as a lawyer, he should know all about fairness. This is not fair in the way that the government is treating Northern Ireland veterans. How can you prosecute veterans, people who are doing their job for the defence of our great nation, and yet all you do is drag us through the docks whilst you are protecting and giving immunity to IRA terrorists? It's wrong, it's not democracy, it's unfair, and we expect better from the British government. And Al Carnes, you should hang your head in shame.
I was one of the first victims of an IRA bomb in England. I was 18 then, 17 in Aldershot, and what I've seen here, a load of my colleagues have died, a lot of serious mental health issues, and we look at terrorists that walk free. You know, we're never going to get justice, we know that, but why should they?
The Conservatives are clearly behind you. How do you feel to have that support?
It's fantastic. It really is fantastic to have that support. We tried to engage with the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, which turned out to be an interesting conversation, but that's it.
I want to make one really simple point, right? As Shadow Defence Secretary, is to say a massive thank you to everyone who served in Northern Ireland, right? Because when they did so, they put their lives on the line to protect the rest of us. And I'll tell you what, the least we can do, this is the least we can do as parliamentarians, is to vote to defend you after you defended us. That's my view.
How are you feeling going into this?
Look, it's a great opportunity to remind the government about the strength of feeling, not just amongst the veterans community, but in the public in general. Yeah, what's happening is totally unacceptable. We sent our bravest people to keep the peace in Northern Ireland. Without them, there wouldn't have been a peace process. And now the government is opening the door to them being run through the courts with vexatious litigation. It must be stopped. There's still time. Please write to your MP and let them know the strength of feeling in your community.
Well, there you go. That was the sentiment of those who are now going to go into Parliament and debate this out. We just hope that the veterans will be protected. It seems like it's not in the Labour government's interest or Keir Starmer's to do anything about it. He is actively putting some of these people behind me in danger if that goes through. Let's hope it's a positive outcome.
Samara Gill there down in Parliament. Thank you to her for that. Well, Mark Francois, who you heard from at the start of that, he's a Shadow Defence Minister and the MP for Raleigh and Wickford, is with me now. Mark, I mean, very good points there raised by yourself, by some of those veterans as well. The fact is, this is going to go through, isn't it?
Well, Peter, thank you for having me on. And the first thing to say is, can I agree with you that if it had not been for the brave service of our veterans in Northern Ireland who fought the terrorists to a standstill, there would never be any Good Friday Agreement. It never would have happened without the British Army. And that debate is going on now. I've been in the Commons chamber, I've come to do this interview, and the vote will be at about 7:15, so 45 minutes from now. Labour have said they're going to vote for this. I regret to say the Liberal Democrats have said they're going to vote for this. So we are heavily outnumbered. However, before this remedial order goes live, it has to also go through the House of Lords, probably in a few weeks' time. And there, Labour have no majority. You have crossbench peers. Some of those people are retired five-star generals, people who commanded the army, people who commanded the whole of the armed forces. In the Lords, they can bring their military expertise to bear, although there's a number of Tory veterans like Ian Duncan Smith and David Davis in the debate already today. But we have to hope that if we were to lose the battle when the bells ring in 45 minutes' time, we don't lose the war. And the way we look at this is very simple. It's a complex issue, but at the end of the day, we are defending those who defended us. That's what it really boils down to. That's what we'll do in 45 minutes. It will then eventually go to the Lords, and there I hope the government will be defeated and this madness will be dropped.
I wonder, just in regard to what you're talking about there, you talked, what Samara was talking to people there about in her report was fairness, was vexatious claims, essentially a two-tier system that you believe will happen. Just expand on that a little bit for people who might not be familiar with this, because we know with the Belfast Agreement there are a lot of people, terrorists in prison who got out. There were people who were on the run who were then given comfort letters, since rescinded, and I mean, various court cases have collapsed and so on. Do you think if more evidence were to come to light against a veteran, that would be treated very differently from whether it, from if the same evidence or a similar set of evidence were to come to light in regard to a terrorist?
Well, you use the phrase two-tier justice, Peter, and that's often what the veterans say to me. Because the army kept records, and often lawyers will then seek to effectively subpoena or get hold of those records and then build cases around them. There is no IRA records office for obvious reasons. And after the Good Friday Agreement, almost all the IRA weapons were decommissioned. They were destroyed. So there is no forensic evidence that you could use to bring a prosecution against an alleged IRA terrorist, most of whom were given letters of comfort by the Blair government in secret. The letters of comfort only came to light some years later when a man called John Downey, the alleged Hyde Park bomber, was at the Old Bailey, and he produced in court his so-called letter of comfort, and the judge abandoned the trial. So practically, there aren't going to be any prosecutions of IRA terrorists, but there could yet be cases against veterans where we do have forensic evidence and we do have records, and that is a totally lopsided system.
It may be lopsided, and I agree with you on that point, and that is by its very nature unfair. Nonetheless, Mark, there are many people, including people there today, who served with great bravery and distinction. There will be people who didn't. There will be people who did not uphold those high standards. Should they not face justice just because they wore a uniform of the UK Army? Because there'll be loads of serving people and people who have served who will think, actually, hold on, we uphold the standards. If people don't, well, there should be some justice for against them and for their victims.
Peter, the army went there to uphold the rule of law.
But not all of them did.
Well, we have had some court cases recently which collapsed because the evidence that was actually brought forward against the veterans was not compelling. There was one court case recently where a former SAS soldier who'd been investigated for 4 years, and often it's the process that's the punishment, came to trial. The judge said that the case was, in the judge's words, ludicrous. And then we had the trial of another veteran, soldierette, held in Belfast in front of a judge, and in a 2-hour summing up, the judge said that the standard of the prosecution evidence was, in his words, well short of what would be required to try someone for murder, which is obviously a high bar. So Hilary Benn himself, the Labour Northern Ireland Secretary, admitted a few weeks ago in the Commons it was now very unlikely that anyone of either side would be realistically prosecuted.
So within that, Mark, within that particular point, what should happen in your view? Should we just draw a line in the sand and just say, look, justice can't be done, it's too long ago, let's try to move on with this?
Well, our Legacy Act, which this remedial order tries to rip up, was actually based on the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission. There was an inquiry by the Defence Committee in 2017, chaired by Sir Julian Lewis, a very bright man. I was on that committee at the time. And they, in a nutshell, concluded it was time to try and draw a line. And the Legacy Act was designed to try and do this. Part of why Sinn Féin are pushing so hard on this is they want to rewrite history. They want to say that the British Army were occupiers and the IRA were freedom fighters. That is utter rubbish.
As we know, that is...
I'm afraid that is what they are... That is the narrative that they're trying to portray.
And Mark, we've got to, first of all, thank you, Mark. That's Mark Francois MP, Shadow Defence Minister. We've got to fight against that pernicious counter-narrative. We've got to remember the truth here. We've got to remember that the vast majority of those veterans served with great bravery and distinction and helped the peace process happen. And the IRA, loyalist terrorists, were the ones who were blowing things up, who were killing people. The army do not have an absolutely spotless record. Of course they don't, nor did the RUC. But Mark's points are well made. It'll be very interesting to see what happens in Parliament later. I fear that is a lost cause for the Conservatives, but certainly there's a lot more to discuss on all of this. Paula is in London and wants to have her say on it. Paula, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, good evening. Hi,
there.
Peter. Can you bear with me? Because I just want to make a couple of points.
Go for it.
I'm of Irish descent. So I got a lecture from my mum in regard to the Northern Ireland issue many years ago, and boy, did she give me a lecture. However, number one I want to make is if the government, our current government, is going to hold accountable these veterans who signed up to serve for the British, government, the British, army.
Certainly to serve their country, to
serve the country. Who's to say, in other wars coming up past, they're going to do the same thing?
And this is the problem, Paula. It's a very, very live issue. Because some people will say, look, this is 50 years ago, but actually it's about right now. Because if you're saying, if you follow orders, if you do what you're told, if you, the whole structure of the military is people following orders, that's what it's all about. Actually, you'll be held accountable for that as time goes on. And if you do follow those orders, you can still be seen as doing something wrong. That is at the heart of this, Paula, so it's a very well-made point.
Okay, so my next point is, and I was a young girl, I've lived in Northern Ireland, and I know how it was. I have lived there during the Troubles, and as with an English accent, and it was a bit scary. My other point is, during the 80s, we would watch the news, and in particular the BBC, and I always remember whenever Gerry Adams or Martin McGuinness, I think it was Martin McGuinness.
Yeah, Martin McGuinness, yeah.
Whenever they were interviewed, whenever they were asked, or an IRA member or even a UVF member, their voices were always dubbed out.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that was the government, that was a government ban, yeah.
Yeah, an actor's voice was used. So the BBC were acknowledging them as terrorists by doing this.
Yeah.
That's the BBC. So make your mind up, BBC. You've got the situation in the Middle East.
Yeah, it's a very, very well-made point, and they called the IRA terrorists because that's what they were and are, and they should absolutely do that with Hamas. Paula, some very good points there, and thank you for them. One person says justice for veterans, quite simply. That is the three-word text message that person has sent through. And thank you for all your thoughts on all of that. We'll speak to Will Barker in a second about what's in the Sun tomorrow, and plenty of time to get as many calls on the air as possible between now and 7 as well. We'll also have a chat with Kevin about what's coming up on his programme after 7. Stay with us.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Time now on Talk Drive to find out what's in the Sun tomorrow. Will Barker is with us. He's Deputy Head of News. Hiya, Will.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, but you've got a smile on your face because you broke a big story today.
Yes.
Tell us all about it.
Here's the bit where I blow my own trumpet, but I was sitting there, just lifting the lid a little bit on how things work at the Sun. I was sitting there on the news desk today and get a call from somebody, let's call a deep throat, a guy with a very sort of deep accent, sort of told me out of the blue that Prue Leith was leaving the Bake Off, like this hugely popular show. She's been there for since 2017 and it came completely out of the blue. And he did tell me that there's a very famous person going to be taking over them, but I can't tell you who at the moment.
Ooh,
You'll have to
okay.
buy the paper tomorrow to find out.
So you're going to find out in the Sun tomorrow who's taking over the Bake Off?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
And so yes, he rang up and we got handed over to Felicity, who phoned up Channel 4 and like, how do you know we were about to release this at 3 o'clock?
Right, yeah, and, so you scooped them?
Exactly, scooped them, and we put it out this afternoon, and she's put out a statement sort of saying how sad she is she's moving on.
Yeah, now it feels like the right time to step back. I'm 86 for goodness sake. There's so much I'd like to do, not least spending summers enjoying my garden. Whoever joins the team, I'm sure they'll love as much as I have. I feel very lucky to have been part of it, and you'll find out who Prue Leith's successor on the Bake Off is tomorrow in the Sun. Let's talk about Prince Harry now, talking to the High Court. Pretty emotional.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bit tricky. It's involving the Daily Mail, so it's quite close to home, but he's suing Associated Newspapers in a £39 million privacy trial case. Has made him and sort of 7 other complainants made a series of allegations against the Mail. Of course, they deny all these, and it was, but you can't ignore it. You've got a royal prince in taking the stand at the High Court today, and we went along and watched him, and he sort of fought back tears, claimed that the Mail had made his wife's life a misery, made all sorts of allegations about them, that his private life was sort of been treated like a bit of commerciality, an open season, I think was the phrase he used, laid it all out, and we'll get to see very shortly what the Mail have to say in return.
They, of course, strongly deny the allegations. Associated Newspapers that publish the Daily Mail, and of course that action continues as Will was saying there. We'll hear their side of things as time goes on. Let's talk about this dreadful story about the woman who died on Christmas Day after falling into a pothole and breaking her hip. Just tell us about this.
Yeah, well, this sort of popped up. There was an argument in PMQs, and the Worksop local MP flagged up this awful case of a gran, Beryl Barrett, who died at Christmas, and as a victim of this sort of issue with potholes. I mean, we've had another bout of terrible weather, which means the roads are just going to be falling apart, and you know, the government have to, quite frankly, do something about it. And it now emerged that around December, Beryl, who's 87, was walking with one of these sort of tri-walkers and got stuck in one of the potholes and fell over and broke her hip, and then very sadly died in hospital.
You don't think of that happening.
No.
I mean, you think it's just a dreadful tragedy. She died a week later in hospital. It really is awful. And as you say, the local Labour MP Steve Yem was talking to you, saying there are literally thousands of potholes in our roads. Notts County Council are failing to repair them, and this is such a familiar thing, but people will be surprised. I think I certainly was to hear that happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us about the nuclear sub-engineers who went ballistic.
Well, this is very shocking. You know, Christmas parties are not immune to punch-ups. You know, people that wouldn't normally socialise together, getting together, and maybe fists and food might fly through the air, but you wouldn't really think that nuclear sub-engineers might be amongst those.
You would imagine they'd be quite calm people.
Yeah.
You'd want them to be quite calm people
and stable
anyway.
in a crisis, and maybe keep calm heads, but they really lost it at their party at the Raffles Social Club in Plymouth, and on a Saturday night before Christmas, Jerome Starr workers discovered that they started punching holes through walls, threw food at staff, and they ended up being ejected from the hall.
Goodness me, a Babcock spokesman said, "We are aware of the alleged incident. An internal investigation is underway. We expect the highest standards of behaviour from colleagues and view any drop in those standards as most disappointing and unacceptable." Do you know what? I met a guy who was on one of the he goes on nuclear subs. I met him at a wedding, and he said it's not actually a nuclear button, it's a trigger for the actual weapons. So yeah, he also described the conditions on a nuclear sub.
Well, they literally have to turn their phones off, and they have no contact during these stints.
You can get, well, actually, there's a viral video. Did you see that video? That viral video that went, it was a guy, really strong Scouse accent, brilliant video describing what it's like, and the gym, the tiny little gym, they have an exercise bike and some weights, and people having to be sort of strapped in when they're sleeping, and it's just a fascinating video. It's really worth seeing, but great stories. I'm dying to find out who the new presenter of the Bake Off is as well. Will, thank you. All those stories, of course, in The Sun tomorrow and at thesun.co.uk. Will Barker is the Deputy Head of News. We'll take loads of your calls, text, tweets and voice notes right up to 7 o'clock, and we'll have a chat with Kevin O'Sullivan in just a few minutes here on Talk Drive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who's been in touch. Julia has been one of them from Rochdale. And Julia, I understand you're, I don't think we've spoken before, but you have your own story to tell, certainly when it comes to the discussion over mental health and benefits. Tell us your thoughts on this, Julia.
Well, I actually was working. I'm actually a mental health practitioner.
Okay.
And I was working for a crisis unit, but at that time my dad took ill, so I was also his carer.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was working part-time, and the DWP contacted me and said that I wasn't earning enough to meet the threshold. The government has a threshold every year that you have to meet, and I was getting some housing benefits because I was only part-time. Mm-hmm. Anyway, what happened was I was pushed into taking a second job, which I couldn't feasibly do. I mean, I'm 60 years old.
You have a lot on your plate as well with your father being unwell as well, Julia. That was a lot to deal with.
Yeah, my dad was registered blind, and he developed heart failure. So I wasn't a full-time carer. I wasn't a paid carer because if I had claimed carer's allowance, my dad would have lost his disability premium.
Right,
and he paid into the system for 71 years.
Yes.
So I couldn't do that to him. And I couldn't take a second job. So then it came to the threats, well, if you don't, then we're going to take away the help that we give you.
I mean, it's just, even just what you've told me there, it's so complicated, and it must be so difficult for you to navigate that system, Julia.
Well, it was, and also, I mean, I know 60 is not old, but at my age, I've paid into the system all my life.
Yeah.
I didn't have the energy to take a second job. And so what's happened, basically, just over that time, my mental health failed, and I've ended up having to come out of work because now my mental health is shot. I mean, I'm on medication now And I've left a job that I really, really loved and I was qualified and good at.
Do you think that was preventable? Do you think you could have continued doing that job if that pressure hadn't been put on you?
Well, I was doing that job. I mean, you know, maybe that pressure would have told eventually. But the thing is, if my caring role had been recognised more, and it hadn't been so difficult to do both, and it hadn't been made so difficult, the threats and the pressure, because I couldn't have afforded to live on a part-time wage without housing benefits.
And there are so many people like you, Julia. This will just resonate with so many people who have had to make those heartbreaking choices. And also, the role of carers and people who do unpaid caring, it really isn't dealt with well in our society at all, Julia. I'm sure you feel that.
I do feel that, and I feel quite angry because, you know, a lot of people think, well, people who claim benefits, you know, they can't be bothered getting a job. I had a job.
Yeah.
I had a job. I enjoyed
No, certainly, there's never anything on our station, certainly from me anyway, that gets at anybody who genuinely can't work. I mean, you have mental health issues, certainly, and I'm sure that you would work if you could, as you've just said there, Julia, and totally, I mean, the help should be there for people who need it. There are some people, of course, who are swinging the lead, but you're absolutely not one of them, Julia, and I wish you well in all the battles that you face, and I appreciate you giving me a call. That's Julia there from Rochdale. Another big story we talked about today was driving tests, and these huge rises, 47% actually, in people who are cheating essentially in the tests, whether that is the theory test or the practical test. Lots of people have been coming to us with their stories. Stephen's in Birmingham and has some thoughts on this. You're very welcome to the programme, Stephen. Tell us your story on this.
Yes, it's astonishing to... Hi, Peter, by the way.
Hi there.
It's astonishing to read about people cheating in theory tests with Bluetooth and that, because I'll try and keep a straight face. When I went to do my theory test, I had a chocolate bar in my shirt pocket.
Right.
I don't know if you remember the Drifter chocolate bar.
I was a big fan of Drifters. Yeah. There's sort of chocolate and wafer in there, as well as a bit of caramel. Great combo there.
Brilliant. I wanted it as a snack after the test. Sat down. The coordinator or whatever said, "You're going to have to take it out of your pocket and put it in the locker room." And I said, "May I ask why?" He said, "Because you could have your answers to the test, or some of them, written on that bar."
Written on the Drifter? I mean...
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. How much writing could you fit on a Drifter bar?
I'm not sure there's very much writing. It also would ruin the Drifter bar, which would be a tragedy in itself.
I was tempted to try it out with a fluorescent pen because the wrapper's blue, and I suggest you'd probably get two answers on there. But he said no. He said you can't take that in. You can only take yourself in.
I mean, that's pretty vigilant. I mean, were you to choose a chocolate bar, I'd probably go for something like a wagon wheel if you're going to write answers on it. Although obviously wagon wheels are smaller than they used to be.
That's a good point. Yeah, I just don't know how anybody could possibly do it. So how people are getting Bluetooth pieces in when I couldn't even get a chocolate bar in, which...
Well, I suppose those Bluetooth headsets can be very, very small. More to the point, Stephen, did you pass the test?
On that occasion, yes. It wasn't my first attempt, but on that occasion I did, and I had the bar afterwards, so thank you for asking.
Excellent. You had the celebratory Drifter afterwards. So Drifters don't exist anymore. They've been discontinued, have they?
I haven't seen one for a long time, Peter, so you may be right on that.
I'm going to ask Ryan, the producer, to check out whether Drifters have been discontinued. I know a man, my really good friend Michael, will know all about it. He's an expert on chocolate and crisps, as am I to some degree. And, OK, they were discontinued in 2007. They were brought back in 2008, and there's more. And again in 2018, due to changes in customer preferences. But can we get them right now? That's my question. I don't think we can, Stephen, and that is a tragedy. They're discontinued again. This is outrageous, Stephen. This is a dreadful, dreadful injustice, I find.
I'll keep you posted if I hear anything.
Keep me posted. If you find a Drifter, you let me know, OK? Stephen, and drive safely. Thanks for your thoughts on all of that. My goodness, a Drifter bar, yes, the tool of those who would cheat on their tests. Let's speak to David in London. David, tell us about your test.
Hello, Peter.
Hi there.
Yes, when I was going to have my test, I was fitting car audio systems for a company, and I was putting in, you know, radios and cassette players at the time. Quite a few years ago it was, and I did one for a gentleman. He came in and he asked if I could do it. I said yes, certainly. We did the work for him, and a couple of days later, I was going for my first driving test, the first time, and the guy who walked out was the tester. He was the same guy.
Same guy. And had you done a good job? Had you charged him a fair price? That's my question, David.
I did him a great job, so he was very pleased with that. So it sort of feathered my nest, and I got through the test, and I got passed okay.
Brilliant.
He said to me, I'm pleased to tell you you passed your test, but you do not fit you drive very slowly. I hope you don't fit your car radios that slow.
Have you sped up since then, David? Have you a bit more confidence maybe since that driving test?
Much quicker now. Yeah.
Well, they often say you don't really learn to drive until about a year afterwards, when you've got through it and you've got everything, all your ducks in a row there. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I crashed my car pretty quick after that, so.
Oh, that's not so good.
Ready for the road, I don't think, but I was okay.
Okay, well,
coming to your other thing about drifters, I can remember when you used to have an Aztec, which was Roundtree's answer to the Mars bar.
An Aztec? I've never had an Aztec. They don't exist anymore, I don't think. Do you know what? No. Our vending machine out there, the most crucial part of the talk infrastructure is our vending machine, and I can see those cans of Diet Coke, and they're not giving them to me at the moment, and it's causing me. I can't work under these conditions, David. It's outrageous.
No.
David, listen, thanks very much. I appreciate your story there. Roger in Cheshire is with me now. He has given me a ring at 03444991000. Roger, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I was listening to your programme earlier about the the bogus driving tests.
Yeah.
Things. And what struck me is, obviously, the driving tests have been highlighted, but are there a lot of other areas where people obtain bogus certificates?
Yeah, it's true. It's a big problem, and we've got to make sure that people are properly qualified to do the things like driving a car.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been for a job interview, but
You've never been for a job interview ever?
Oh, 60 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Goodness me. Well, Roger, listen, thanks for your thoughts. I appreciate it. Roger hasn't been for a job interview in 60 years.
Ever? What? His entire career?
Well, for the last 60 years, it was a long time ago.
I've hardly ever had any. Because,
really?
Well, I'm a Fleet Street journalist.
Yeah.
You get jobs in the pub when you're drunk, basically. You get fired in the... I once got fired in the pub.
You got fired in the pub?
Yeah. Well, that happened all the time.
What happened?
Well, I think I was drunk in the office or something. I probably filed some load of rubbish, got the paper into trouble. I was fired at one end of the bar and hired by another paper at the other end of the bar. That
on
was
the same evening.
Fleet Street was cowboy country.
Different.
Yeah, you didn't do interviews. People just said, "Oh yeah, you can have a job."
You can do it.
Listen,
what's coming up in your show, Kev?
So obviously we're going to have a look at old Trump. Well, his speech, I thought, at Davos started brilliantly and then kind of spilled over into kind of meandering, rambling nonsense. So we're going to look at that. At the end of the show, by the way, ITV has put a trigger warning on the jokes of the late great Bob Monkhouse. So at the risk of causing profound offence to the audience, I'm going to run through a load of them and see what they think.
A few mother-in-law jokes.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, they're very funny. I mean, they may be offensive to some people.
He was a genius,
but
absolutely.
I don't care.
Yeah.
You remember his famous joke, they all laughed when I said I was going to be a comedian.
They're not laughing now. Great joke.
But we're going to kick off with an extraordinary story that the Ministry of Defence, while the Chief of our Defence Staff is warning that there's a £28 billion military funding black hole, the MOD has handed out £57 million in staff bonuses over the last year, taking the tally since 2019 to £200 million.